Come on. What the?
Yep, it's good.
This episode is brought to you by yours truly, Matt Norn of Remax Bell Park. For all of your real estate needs, call me 860-428-6534. Your dreams are my job. At the bench, we are in the middle of our campaign of spread the love. Find a pantry, a food pantry near you, and do what you can when you can. Uh, these are the leaner months for donations, so if you can, try to remember a little bit extra for our food pantries so we can keep people from starving. Anyway, back to welcome to the community workbench. This is Matt Noren and Kyle Morrissey's fill-in Ben Wakely of Wakely Builders. We are your hosts of the number one podcast in my basement. At the bench, we try to repair the sense of community. So every week, we bring you small businesses, entrepreneurs, community leaders, charities, and pretty much whoever we feel like talking to. And today, we feel like talking to Christian Sarantopoulos. How you doing, Christian?
I'm good. I'm
Good.
glad I'm part of that last category.
And welcome back. This is at least your second.
It's my second. The first time I was on with Ben. Ben was a guest.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
We talked a lot of basketball that night.
Yeah. So you guys came in, and I like how this worked out, where we're just post March Madness, and you guys we could talk about basketball. But I've always wanted to, just like I brought Ben back on last fall, and we talked mostly construction. Now I'd love to talk about your law practice. What made you want to go and be a lawyer, and where did your education start? And
You know, I get that question a lot, and I really think it's as simple as I was always around my uncle. He was a lawyer who started his law firm in Danielson in 1959, and I can remember, walking down Main Street if I needed a copy machine, or I was doing a book report or something at the grade school, and going into his office, and this is pretty cool, and all the books, and he smoked White Owl cigars, so the office always smelled like a White Owl cigar.
my grandfather smoked those too in his wood shop.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop you right there. At no point should any of this content or episode be construed or taken as legal advice.
That's absolutely correct. If you need legal advice, make an appointment, or with me or somebody else. But
Yeah.
whatever we talk about today is not legal advice.
Yeah, if you need legal advice, call 860-779-3919. That's Sarantopoulos' office.
So, I was always around him, and so it was something that I kind of looked up to, I think. And when it came time to, kind of settle on a career, that's kind of the direction I went.
Yeah.
I was a Killingly grad, 1986. Getting
Nice.
a little old, just turned 58. So
Just a number, right?
just a number, exactly. And then went to Yale. 4 years there, had a great education experience. Studied history, basically, and then UConn Law. And law school's a 3-year program, unless you go nights, and then sometimes it's a 4-year program. And the last semester of my legal career, I actually spent in the Netherlands.
Oh, wow.
I went to, it wasn't an exchange. It was a program that was not really an American exchange program. Most of the students there were European students, but there were 5 or 6 American law firms that would send students. UConn was one of them. I think Florida was another, and there were a couple other schools. And so it was about 400 students. We were studying basically international law and European community law at that point. It was before what is now the European Union. In fact, I took one of the classes I took was air and space law, something that I knew I would never use, but
Air and space.
yeah. Oh yeah. What happens if, the rocket explodes on the way up? Is it in orbit yet? Is it not in orbit? If it comes down and, creates some property damage, who's responsible? Is it the country of origin? Is it the manufacturer? Is it the NASA or, Roscosmos, over in Russia, who's legally responsible? And the same thing with airlines, if, they lose your luggage, right? What are the laws behind that? If, God forbid, there's a plane crash and, someone gets hurt, who's responsible? Those sorts of things.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of fun. And I will tell you honestly, I went to more classes over there, even though I was in Europe, than I did here in the States, because it was really interesting, and you were with 400 other students, most of whom were Europeaners. It was an English language based
Yeah.
experience. And then I got to see Europe. I was over there for 5 months studying, and I got to travel all over Europe, and it was just an amazing time.
Wow.
If I had learned French in high school, I probably would have stayed over there because I would have gotten a job, probably with the European Commission. They would take some of these students if you had the language, and you'd go to Brussels and work. And so who knows? I might have stayed in Europe.
Is like Yale's education of law like applicable in France?
Uh, you said Yale's. What do you mean?
Well, you went to Yale. Oh, you went to
yeah, I
Yale,
went to
and
Yale,
then you went to UConn Law.
Yeah, no,
So
it's not. Yeah, and you know that's the thing. When you go to law school, you don't learn the laws.
Okay.
You learn the processes, right? So you learn procedure. You learn how to research, how to write, how to make arguments. UConn was great because they had some clinics. So you could actually go in and, under the direction of your professor, who was typically a practicing attorney, you could go into the clinic and be sworn in as a clinic attorney and actually do some work. So they had a bunch of criminal clinics, for instance, and there were some labor clinics and housing clinics and that sort of thing. But if the law school doesn't have something like that, you're in a classroom learning theory. You know, the bar exam, which is the big exam, and it's a hazing exam, at least it was back then. It was crazy because it was 2 days, 8 hours each day, 7.5 or 7 to 7.5 hours each day, with like a half hour for lunch. I remember we went to some hotel in Waterbury, and half of us were getting sick in the bathroom because we were so worried about this exam. But the first day is multiple choice, except it's not based on Connecticut law. It's based on the 51st state, and there is no 51st state. But the bar exam ahead of time sends out this: here are your statutes, here are your regulations, here's your 51st state. Learn it, and then
Oh, so they just came up with a fictitious.
they come up with this
state.
fictitious state, which is crazy. And then I was talking to Ben before we started. The second day, which was more substantive, were essays. And that was based on Connecticut law. But again, to show you that law school doesn't really teach you the substantive law, each question was worth 5 points. And 2 of those points were simply, can you construct a legal argument? Do you have your proposition or your thesis? Do you then take from this paragraph they gave you of facts, the correct facts to support that thesis? Do you then have a cognizant argument after that? Do you have a conclusion? So if you have this well-constructed argument that flows and makes logical sense,
Yeah.
then you got 2 of your 5 points.
Huh.
The third point, was basically, did you pick the right facts out of the question to be able to answer? And so you could basically pass the exam getting like, 2/3 of the essays wrong, because you needed like 70 points, and you could get 60 of them basically by just answering every question wrong. So,
Wow.
and I think it's a hazing exercise. I really do. I think there are better ways to test people out of law school, whether you're going to be a good attorney or not.
Okay.
So, and people ask me this: what makes a good attorney? Okay, and I really think that a lot of it, and I don't care whether you're a litigator or you're a transactional lawyer that's just doing like real estate, or working for a big company negotiating contracts or mergers and acquisitions. To me, people forget, what's the title? Well, the title is attorney and counselor at law. That's really our formal title, right? Except in Connecticut, we call it Commissioner of the Superior Court, because you're a commissioner of the court. You're actually an arm of the court when you get sworn in.
Yeah.
But so, okay, the first part, that's easy. You're an attorney, right? You're supposed to know the laws. You're supposed to know, how to apply them. If you don't know, look it up. Give some good legal advice. But to me, the most important part is the counselor part.
Right.
And it doesn't matter what it is. It could be, I had a young person come in, 20 years old, right? Unfortunately, he's had 2 DUIs at the age of 20. Yeah. Well, I can be an attorney. I can, order the police report and order the dash cams and make sure the police did everything correctly so that the constitutional rights were preserved. And, the test results, did they refuse the test? Did they take the test? Are they over the legal limit? What are the penalties? Gather the information I can to kind of defend my client. Well, this kid, he's got an education and he's trying and he's, he does have a job. He's being productive in society. Just, and go negotiate with the state's attorney what the disposition is going to be. Well, that's the attorney. The counselor is sitting there and talking to that person and basically saying, look, this is your second one. You're 20. And I don't want to be your parent because that's not my role. But my role as your attorney, I don't want you to have to come back and hire me again.
Right.
I mean, I make a nice enough living without having someone coming back a third time,
times, yeah.
right? So you start talking to them. What's going on? I mean, you hopefully get them to understand, if they don't already, that they've got a problem. They're probably an alcoholic. Either they can't stop drinking, and so they binge drink and get into trouble, or they're drinking too much. So why? And how do you make sure that this doesn't happen again? You've got to stay sober. You have to stop drinking. Well, how do you do that? Well, you make sure that, is it peer pressure? Is it you've got family members that drink? Is there a medical condition? Are you drinking because you have stressors in your life? Are you self-medicating? We see a lot. So you go through all of that. And then, we guide them through the DMV process because there are license suspensions and that sort of thing that, maybe a lawyer isn't going to necessarily go through if you're just hiring them for the criminal matter. We make sure that, we're covering all the bases. And I think I've done a good job if ultimately I'm giving them good representation, but I'm also trying to make sure that they don't have to come back for that problem. Come on back and see me when you need to do good things, right? You want to buy a house, or closing on a house, or drafting a will, or you're getting married, so how do I get my name changed, or that sort of stuff. I mean, that's
right.
So that, to me, it really sets apart. I mean, you have good lawyers who do a good job legally. They know the law. They're effective for their clients. They can negotiate well. They can advocate well. You want to be a great lawyer, you can't forget the counselor part.
Yeah.
Because if you do, you're only doing about 2/3 of your job, I think. You may have some lawyers that tell you otherwise. I don't. That's not my role. No. If you're practicing in Northeast Connecticut, where everybody's your friend, everybody's your neighbor.
Everybody knows everybody.
Yeah, everybody knows everybody. I mean, Sarantopoulos, we've been around since and there are a lot of families that have been around, but we've been around, the families since the 1920s. My father came from a family of 13 kids. Everybody knew who they were. My mother was the home economics teacher at Killingly Junior High School for years. Wow. She taught almost 4 generations. Everybody knows who Linnea Sarantopoulos is, Mrs. Sarantopoulos, right?
Yeah.
So they come to you because they trust you, or they trust the name, or they've heard of the reputation.
Yeah.
So if you want to be a good lawyer, then they're coming to you for help.
Yeah.
Help them.
Now, going back to your example of young kid, and together you guys decide that maybe he needs to be in a rehab program. Wouldn't that ultimately help his case anyway if he's already signed up?
This young, that kind of thing? Absolutely. The court, and some people will disagree with this, but essentially the court system, yes, is about, if first and foremost, it's about justice. Okay. And then people disagree. What is justice exactly? Right. But at least in the criminal court, and I don't just practice criminal law, I do civil law and I do other things too, but we're talking about criminal right now. The criminal court, the system, the legislators who have drafted the laws and the regulations and everything, they've decided that, the first gut reaction is not to lock somebody up and with punitive punishment. It's to try and rehabilitate. Yeah. It's to try and not ruin people's lives who have made a mistake. Now, there are certain crimes where, are bad enough. That goes out the window. You're gone. Okay. Yeah. But, you go out to dinner with your spouse, and, you should only have 2 drinks with the meal, but you have 3 or 4, right? And you're home, and, you hit that center line, and a police officer's pulled you over, and now you've got a drunk driving charge. Do we really want to, send that person to jail in that circumstance? Or do we want to make sure that the system is set up so that hopefully they won't make that same mistake again? Now, if they make that same mistake again, well, then the punishment gets a little more severe, and you make it a third time. Now it's a felony, and longer periods of license suspension and bigger hoops you have to go through. So it's progressive, basically, in terms of we start down here and then we work our way up in terms of the severity of the punishment. So again, my job is to hopefully you don't get to that point. Right. And in this particular case, the father he had good family support, and after talking about it, the best thing for this young man was he went 30 days inpatient, and the father's like, where can we go? Well, I'm not your doctor, but I've been doing this 31 years. I know where the programs are, and I know which programs might be a little better in terms of this guy. He was a smart kid. He's got an engineering degree, but this place I knew would let him work from there. That sort of thing. So you kind of try, if you have that knowledge, to fit someone into a good spot. He's come back. Court system's still concerned. Two of these real early. They want to make sure he's okay, and there's going to be some punishment. It's the second one, but I'm going to have an easier time negotiating a punishment that's more favorable for my client because he's tried to help himself. He's gotten into treatment. When he gets out of the inpatient, he's now going into a day program. And then from there, during his probation period, he'll probably have weekly counseling to go to. So yeah, that's the way. If the crime is not so serious, that's the way the judicial system's supposed to work.
Right.
Initially.
Yeah. That makes sense. What types of laws what type of law do you practice in your, like,
Right.
I know if I get arrested tonight, which is highly likely, when Ben's around, we really loosen up.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So I handle criminal law and serious motor vehicle law. That's kind of the criminal court.
Yeah.
So I could certainly help with that. On the civil side, for litigation, we do personal injury work and we do workers' comp. Personal injury can be anything from, an auto accident where you're hurt, to, a slip and fall, a dog bite. It can be an assault, medical malpractice. We take a look at those and make sure that if there is something there, we get you to the right people. Workers' comp. So if you're hurt on the job, it doesn't matter whose fault it is with workers' comp. It's not like negligence, personal injury, where there has to be someone. You need three pieces of the puzzle. If it's that, you need someone to have a duty to do something. You got to follow the rules of the road, right? When you're driving, you have to have the breach of that duty. I ran through the red light, right? I'm supposed to stop. That's the law. But the breach is I go through the light, and then you have to have damages. As a result of that breach of the law, someone has gotten hurt. Workers' comp is entirely different. You get hurt on the job, as long as you're not, committing, a heinous crime while doing it, then the statute has some basic protections for you. The workers' comp carrier is supposed to pay your medical bills that are related to that. They're supposed to pay a percentage of your lost wages through what your workers' comp rate is. They pay you some mileage to and from the doctors. There's vocational rehabilitation training if you get hurt badly enough and can't go back to that job, because workers' comp is not a job protection statute. You can get hurt, and if you can't return back to your job without restrictions after a reasonable period of time, the employer can let you go. So we do that. And then on the transactional side, we do house closings and refinances, as you know.
I know.
We draft wills and basic life planning documents like advance directives, which people think of as a living will, but there's a little more to it. Powers of attorney, that sort of thing.
Trusts and all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
we don't do a lot of trusts. The only trusts that we handle are what are called testamentary trusts, meaning it's in a will. So, you've got kids under 18, right? So if God forbid something happened to you and your wife, until they turn 18 at the very least, you've got to have a trustee in place to handle their money and make financial decisions. And in the will, you can actually extend that period for as long as you want. If you said, "Yeah, my kids are irresponsible," or "I'm worried about them."
That's what we did.
Yeah, well,
So they're 40.
yeah.
40.
Well, they take after Ben. That's the
Yeah,
problem.
exactly.
So that's a trust within a will. It's a very simple document. We don't do irrevocable trusts and that sort of thing. You really have to. That has to really be a large part of your practice, because the laws are changing all the time in terms of the exact language you need, the tax implications, that sort of stuff. So we stay away from the trusts. But if someone calls me, that's part of my job. I'll give you a name or two if I know someone that's really good.
Yeah.
And tell you this is who you should go see, or here's a couple of people you can think of.
Nice.
So we don't do that. We probate estates. So we're in the probate courts, probating estates and helping loved ones who have to, get the name out of the house of the person who's passed away, and there's no beneficiaries on the accounts, so they need a court order to get the accounts turned over and that sort of thing. And
I've worked with you on a few of those.
Yeah, yeah.
We had
an interesting
one.
In fact, that one's not over. This is a funny story. It's not a funny story. It's a condemnation in how broken our government is, right?
Okay.
This is a good story. I think he knows. So we represented this woman who lived in Connecticut who came to see me 30-something years ago, about 30 years ago. I've been practicing. This is going to be my 32nd year this October.
Wow.
So she was an early client, a workers' comp client. She worked in one of the mills in Oregon, got hurt, and I developed essentially a lifelong relationship with this woman in terms of providing her legal help. Well, she passes away, and as you know, it turns out her heir, she drafted a will. There was nobody left in the United States. It was a woman who lived in Austria or Germany. And so,
Austria, yeah.
Yeah. So Matt got involved and, did a great job cleaning the house out, which was a mess, and selling the house. And
talk about a needle in a haystack.
Yeah.
They call me, and I'm sitting at my butcher block one morning eating breakfast, and I get this call from Austria. Who's answering that? Of course, Matt Noren is. I'll talk to anybody.
There you go.
So I'm like, let's see what Austria has to sell,
Yeah, right.
And just couldn't be a nicer human being on the other end. Yep. And I was just like, okay, but it wasn't like your typical either automated thing or selling anything. She actually had like roads and an address, and then a neighbor's name and her address and her phone number that I could get in touch with to get into the house. And I was just like, all right. And my next thought was, I'm going to call Christian to see how do we really legitimize this and make sure it was legit. And it was wild because then it happened that you actually you knew her.
Yeah, I did. That's right. I knew the woman who died, which you didn't know when you called me.
Right. And
talk about small towns and people, right? So the crazy thing about this was, because she was being buried with her husband in the middle of the state, a funeral home out that way got involved in terms of preparing her and and ultimately burying her ashes. And they forgot to notify Social Security that she was dead. And so Social Security keeps, unbeknownst to anybody, we don't even know this account exists, and they keep dumping, about $2,400 a month into her account. And so we close the estate out, and I get this phone call from the local bank, after we close this estate out, saying, "Hey, we just found this account here in this woman's name. Aren't you, involved in this estate?" I'm like, "Yeah." They're like $32,000 sitting in this account. So, okay, what do we do? Except we didn't know where it was from at that point, and the bank didn't know where the money had come from. They hadn't done the research. So we get another court order. We go to the probate court, and the money gets shipped to Austria. And then we get a phone call. I get a phone call from the local bank, frantic, saying, "We need that money back." I'm like, "What? That money's is now in Austrian francs or whatever they have. I don't know. I'll try to get it back. She's a nice lady." And we find out that it's because Social Security now wants their money back, the government, which is the way it should happen, right? So long story short, we contact the woman. She wires the money back, which was amazing. We give it to the bank, and then about 6 months go by, and then I get another phone call from the bank. "Hey, remember that account where we had to get the money back? Well, the government won't take it." I'm like, What do you mean the government won't take it? The government took 2 months back, $2,400. The bank tried to send the rest of the money 6 times back to the federal government. And this is just recently.
Yeah.
And the government bean counter, whoever the heck it was, basically said, and they got a supervisor on, we don't want it back. What do you mean you don't want it back? Whose money is this? You can keep it.
Oh,
So that money is now, there's about, 28,000 of the $32,000 that's going to the
Austria.
air in Austria.
and I mean, I would assume this is through email or something in writing that
Oh, yeah.
they
It's-
said it's yours.
I can show you the emails.
It's just like,
We don't want it. We are
It's just
not
so-
reopening this file.
yeah,
So, here we are, right? Everybody screams and hollers, correctly so, that
Right.
the government is broken.
and spending money irresponsibly
Yep,
or
absolutely.
inefficiencies, and we are now witness of it.
It was broken then. I will tell you right now, it is still broken. Nothing's gotten any better. It probably hasn't gotten worse. It doesn't matter who's there.
Yeah.
It is so dysfunctional.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're spending all kinds of money. We've got this huge debt and deficit, and yet here's somebody trying to do the right thing and give the money back to the government. They won't take it. Figure that out.
And we have someone who's not even a citizen trying to do the right thing.
Correct.
Sends it back.
Sent it
you know,
back.
it was just like, it's wild.
Just nuts. So,
So-
I mean, I don't know how many estates I've done all the years, but you've got these twists. This one was, and that's what keeps it interesting, right? Whether there's some crazy twist to something, or you're meeting new people all the time, you're helping people. My first year as a lawyer, I worked in Hartford for 1 year with a mid-sized firm, and I hated it because I never got to sit across the desk from my client. I was representing, companies. It was transactional, and I'm like, I don't know who I'm helping.
Right.
That's why I do this. I mean,
So what does that mean? Like you were doing the wordsmithing of everything and
Well,
coming up with case.
yeah, a lot of research,
Studies. Okay.
but it was a lot of grunt work too. Now, granted, if I had stayed, you would have had, I would have had more client contact, I'm sure, but it wasn't. It's very different from you coming into my office needing something, and at the end of the day, we can shake each other's hands, and I derive that satisfaction because I've helped someone. I've helped someone local.
Right.
I've helped a person.
Yeah,
And for me, that's the satisfaction.
for sure.
Some lawyers, you work on this, and this firm did a lot of this, mergers and acquisitions, right? You got A company buying B company, and what's the stock transfer going to be, and how are we going to deal with the debt and the assets, and you've got these 800 pages of contracts and everything else, and you're going through all of that, tax implications. Okay, you're helping the company, and you might be helping the stockholders, but I just don't get the same
For sure.
a satisfaction from it. So
Yeah.
that's why I came home.
Love it. And so you have Sarantopoulos and Sarantopoulos.
So that's the two families. My uncle started his law firm in Danielson in 1959. He was a World War II vet. He left to go fight World War II without a high school diploma. He was underage. He and his brother enlisted. They ended up in Germany, in Europe. His brother was killed the day before the Battle of the Bulge started. Wow. They didn't know the Germans were massing. They were somewhat raw. They had their first battle the day before, which they had won, a skirmish, and they're moving into Germany, and they just get basically to over the line of where Germany was at the time, and the Germans just came at him, and he died. He was setting up a machine gun position on kind of a knoll, firing into a pillbox that was disguised as a farmhouse. I've been over there. I've found it. I've seen the maps and that sort of stuff, and so that the rest of his company could get into the town. And he was hit. He died a day later in a field hospital. My uncle was captured about a couple of weeks later, different part of the Battle of the Bulge. Now we're in the middle of the battle. And he's captured along with a lot of other soldiers, and they're marched into Germany. And they end up in a Stalag prison. And he was there for 4.5 months. And he got lucky. Patton's son-in-law was an officer prisoner at this Stalag. And Patton decided, the hell with the orders I've got. They told me I'm not going anywhere near this place. Well, I'm going in to get my son-in-law. And he takes I think it was a division, and marches in, and the German camp knows they're coming, and they're not going to protect the grunts. They're going to protect the assets they've got, which are the officers. So they leave the barracks basically unattended. And there's a book called The Longest Winter, and there's about a half a chapter that talks about this. And my uncle had talked to me about it twice. Never wanted to talk about it.
Wow. Okay.
You know, they slept on, you know, slats for beds. He had his bunkmate died of starvation because he refused to trade an heirloom watch he had for some more food. You know, they had cold running water so they could essentially kind of bathe themselves outside, and they'd spend all day picking the lice off of each other. You know, the food was a loaf of bread about this big. They would get a dull knife, and they'd have to cut it up for 13 people. And if they were lucky, they got what they called soup, but essentially it was hot water with maybe a couple of rotten potatoes and onions in it. And
Jeez.
he lost, you know, I don't know, 40 or 50 pounds. But anyway, as they're coming in to get Patton's son-in-law, the 200 of them vote. And should we stay and wait for the Americans, or should we bust out of here? And 13 of them voted to bust out, and my uncle was one of them. So the rest of them stayed. 13 of them take off. My uncle's got another GI on his back who can't walk, and they walk west towards the Americans. And within a day, they hit them, and they're free. The remaining 180 or so, the Germans pick up the camp at that point. They beat the Americans back. They pick up the camp, put the prisoners into boxcars to bring them deeper into Germany, into other stalags. And about 3 weeks later, the Americans think that train is a munitions train, and they bomb it. And most of the GIs die. So my uncle comes back to the States. This is right towards the end of the war. You know, and sets up. He goes to the University of Cincinnati on the GI Bill because UConn won't take him because he doesn't have a high school diploma.
Oh, wow.
Goes there, then comes back to UConn Law, gets his degree, and decides he's going to set up practice in his hometown. Starts in 1959. He works for many years. I graduate from law school in '94, and I work 1 year in Hartford. He knows I don't like it. Talk to him. Says, "Come on, you can join me." So it was him and I for a year. My wife at the time, Rachel, was also a graduating attorney the following year. He brought her in. So it was the two families, basically.
That's nice.
He practiced another 16 years with us, retired in 2010 at the age of 87, because that's what that generation does.
Yeah, yeah.
Passed away a couple of years later, and it was Rachel and I, and then she became a family relations officer for the state of Connecticut. So it's just me.
Yeah.
And, you know, but we kept the name.
Yeah.
Which you're allowed to do. So,
Right.
So that's where the Sarantopoulos comes
I
from.
mean, just out of nostalgia, you got to keep the name.
Exactly.
That is just,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
that's an amazing story,
Yeah.
especially the whole war part.
Oh, yeah.
And you both went to UConn Law.
Yep. Well,
That's-
all three of us were UConn law grads, so
Wow.
we had that in common.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was pretty amazing. He was a great lawyer. He was a bull in a china shop, but had a heart of gold. You know, he cared, and he could be the sweetest guy in the world, but look out. You know, I mean, he was an old style advocate. You know, pound the table and make your argument as loud and as forcefully as you can, and
Yeah.
blow people over. Basically, that's the way you did it back then.
Yeah.
And I have a little of that in me when I need it.
Oh, for sure. That's one of my favorite things about you.
Oh, I tell it like it is. There's no doubt about that.
Yep, you definitely tell it like it is, but also you're a pit bull for your clients, our clients, and I've seen it in more ways than one, not just through real estate transactions. I mean, we had a friend that was having trouble with a home invasion,
Right.
Gone wrong, and
Is there a home invasion gone right?
well, so
See, that's why he's here.
yeah,
Right?
all right.
Yeah.
You got me. All right. It went extra bad because what they had been arrested for, they could have made bond and gotten out the next day because the bond was super cheap, right?
Right.
But they were in the barracks talking about how they were going to kill this individual for turning him in and getting him caught. So Sarantopoulos goes right down to the court that day and basically lobbies for him to be protected, and that you know, I mean, you got the bond like
Oh yeah, we got the bond jacked up
way
real
up,
high.
way up.
Yeah.
So they needed like $500,000 to get out.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, it was like, which I don't know. Thankfully so, because then
Yeah, I wasn't representing the bad guys there. I was representing the victim.
Yeah,
Right, yeah.
yeah.
Which we do. I mean,
Right.
you can do both.
For
I mean,
sure.
You know, so-
And
I've been on both sides. I do both.
yeah.
You know, so
Yeah, and I mean, the one of them got like 6 years and never got to come back out. So that was, you know, in the interim to do more damage,
Right.
which was, I mean, basically, Sarantopoulos saved our client's life, you know, in that way. So to me, the gratitude getting that phone call. I was standing next to him, you know, and you know, it was just the wash over his face of the relief, you know, that they weren't going to get.
and that's
come
why
out
you
and
do
hurt
it,
him.
right?
Yeah,
You do the same thing. I know you're one of the most conscientious realtors, you know, out there, and you match someone up with the perfect house, or you know, you advise the client on how to get that house prepped so that it'll sell for the best price. And you know, and all right, we've got these issues we have to deal with. So you know, how do we work through them? I mean, that you know.
Yeah.
It's that counseling, right? It's
Right,
not just the
right. The
transaction.
counseling
right? You don't just
and-
show up for the closing for your commission, right?
Right,
You know, I
right.
mean,
yeah,
there's some realtors out there that do that.
for sure.
You know, there are a lot that don't. They're
Yeah.
great people.
Yeah, we have a really good
Yeah.
community of realtors. I will say that it makes the job so much better that, you know, everybody, pretty much everybody in this area has a heart.
Yeah.
You know, as far as I'm sure anyone can see. I've only seen like highlights of like realtors on TV that are just like, you know, at the throat of, you know, being huge and being famous and, you know, collecting paychecks and stuff like that. And we just don't have that culture around here that I've seen. You know, we have, you know,
It's a good place to live. It's a good
Yeah.
place to work.
Yeah.
People are good.
yeah,
You know, I mean,
yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Obviously, I try to boast everybody every week. Northeast Connecticut is just my favorite, and I've been
spot.
around. I've traveled a lot, quite a bit, not a lot, but I just keep saying this is where I want to be. So, now, does your law career spill over into refereeing?
Oh, yeah, good and bad.
Okay.
Well, you know, I just finished my 30th year refereeing.
Wow.
So, and one of my mentors is a guy by the name of Bob Bernier. I'm sure a lot of people know him. He's living now closer to his daughter because he's got a couple of grandkids now, so he's not in the area anymore. But he was one of my mentors, and he'd see me work and give me pointers and everything else. And you know, I'd been doing it 7 or 8 years, and kind of thought I knew what the hell I was doing out there, and you know, you knew how to blow a whistle and give out some technicals and that sort of thing, right? And he said to me one day, he said, "Stop refereeing like a lawyer."
Oh.
I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He really didn't describe it. He wanted me to figure it out. Stop refereeing like a lawyer. And, you know, it took me a few more years to kind of figure it out. And I tell this story to a lot of officials, but there was one year about a couple of years later, so 9 or 10 years in, and at the end of the season, I'm sure Ben does this, you know, you kind of analyze your season. Things I did right, things I didn't do so well. What do I need to keep working on? You know, where can I improve? And I had worked like, I don't know, probably 45 games that year, and I'd given out like 22 technical fouls. And, you know, I kind of said to myself, is it them or is it me?
This is basketball for those
Yeah,
who
this is
don't
basketball,
know.
right? And I decided it was me. And because, you know, you're not out there as a referee trying to control the game, right?
Oh, really?
And
Okay.
you're not. If you're trying to control the game, you're out there as a lawyer, right? You know, trying to control the outcome, not the outcome, but the process and everything. You know, you can't do that as a ref. You have to let the game come to you, and you have to react based on what's happening in the game. Yeah, you're adjudicating, right? You know, I mean, we're making all kinds of decisions all game long as to whether you're going to blow the whistle or not blow the whistle, and if you blow the whistle, what do you got next, and that sort of thing. But so in that regard, you know, it took me a little while to figure out that they're not the same. Now, having said that, you know, I think communication skills, You blow the whistle, you've got to communicate to the players, the coaches, the table, the fans, what's going on out there, right? And you've got to be confident, and you've got to, be decisive, right? You also have to, at times, you're not negotiating, but you've got to have good communication skills dealing with that coach that doesn't like the last 4 calls you've made. Or kind of, quietly talking to the player and saying, hey, you got to knock it off. We don't want you to pick up your 5th foul, but you kind of knock it off. The rules,
Right.
So there's a lot of skills that are similar that I think have made me a better official once I finally figured out how to be an official, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Less attorney, more counselor.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's right. That's
See,
right.
that's why he's here.
That's why he's here. That's right. Yeah.
I say like 5 things the whole time.
But they're like
They're the
5 best things.
That's right. That's right. So, and to me, the refereeing is a complete release, and I'm sure Ben will say the same thing. And it's not just when you step on the court, it's the hour before or so. You just get locked in thinking about the game and your partner and what are we going to do tonight? How do we have to call this game? Because those 10 players out there and those 2 coaches and the fans deserve the very best. And the game is so fast, even at the little kid level.
Yeah.
It just is. And Ben and I have been fortunate enough. We're both doing some college women's basketball, so the level is up there, and we both do PSA games. That's post-grad. Those are kids that the following year are going to UConn or Louisville or Texas Tech. That's great basketball. They're great athletes. I'm very happy it's a small gym because at 58 years old, I can still get up and down with these great athletes. So it's a release. You can't think about anything else.
Yeah.
Everything else goes away.
It's that
So
focus.
your mind just gets to refresh.
Yeah.
It's good stuff. It's good stuff. I love it.
That's cool.
Yeah. So
I will say, and I think I told this the last time you guys were on, I had a coach in high school that was a ref. He was a coach. He was a player. So he had played all 3 roles. And in practice, scrimmage, he was letting us be refs of the scrimmage, which was a very eye-opening experience for me, especially because I was terrible at refereeing. But it was so wild how you kind of control the tempo. You may not control the game, but you control how aggressive people get towards you. Like all of a sudden, if you're not
control the
calling
tempo
enough
and
out,
the
and they
tone.
pick up on that energy immediately.
Yeah,
It's such a quick feedback of
sure.
like, oh, you didn't call that. Watch that. You know what I mean? It escalates quick if you're not calling enough, and then it'll de-escalate if you call, more. And it's a balance that you got to, and it's definitely an art form.
Yeah. You have to adapt. You have to adapt to the situations, and you got to do that in law too. It's the same. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, like I said, I love it. We do it again next year. Ready to go. Ben and I have got a college camp we're going to one of the days this upcoming weekend to get ready for next season. And
So what's that, like a camp where a bunch of referees are getting together, or?
yeah, there'll be a bunch of refs. This is actually a tryout camp. So Ben and I are technically trying out again, but we've been on this staff for 3 or 4 years now. So, unless something disastrous happens, we'll get picked up. But there'll be a lot of younger refs there that are trying out. So they've got some of the veterans working with the younger people because we're working games.
Yep,
It's AAU, but if it's high level AAU, it's some of those games are tough to call. And not only are they tough to call, but the hardest thing about refereeing and being a litigator, right, is getting up in front of people and refereeing. It's hearing the catcalls and the boos and the derogatory comments, right? Mm-hmm. Litigation, it's some judge telling you you're wrong, or they don't agree with your argument, and you can still think you're right, but the judge is the one, or the jury's the one that's going to tell you this is the way it is.
Yeah,
So you got to have some thick skin, right?
for sure.
But it's really hard. And I just want to, we'll shift just for a second into the complete basketball. I really wish that fans and parents in particular, the younger the player, the worse the parent is, because they all think Johnny or Julie is, going to be the next Keisha Sales or Michael Jordan, right?
Right.
And they want their child to do well. But the problem is that that's where you have your younger referees, because you're not going to put them on a varsity high school game. You're going to put them with the little kids because the game doesn't matter, the result.
Right.
It doesn't,
Yeah.
you know? But so people aren't going into refereeing or officiating of any sports because the fan culture has gotten ugly.
Yeah.
And it's getting worse. And, you know, I had a client the other day who's a former Plainfield High, you know, basketball player. Said, "Hey, why don't you ref? We need refs." "Oh, I don't want to deal with the fans. I don't think I could handle that." I'm like, "Well, we can help you. We can, you know, I mean, you know, you got to." That's one of the reasons I don't have 22 technicals anymore. I have a couple. Well, this year it was a little higher.
He won a prize this year.
I won a prize. I think I had 8 this year. But most years I have 2 or 3 total.
Yeah.
And you know, a 65 game season. So, you know, you don't
Oh
call
wow,
too many.
that's a lot of games.
Yeah, I'm going all winter long. But you know, I'm like, look, we've got tools to deal with it. You know, you've got site director who can help you with the fans, and we've got warnings you can give before you give out technicals and that sort of thing. He's like, I don't want to deal with it because it's craziness. It really is. And it would be wonderful if the fan can just remember, first of all, it's a sporting event. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not the end of the world, number one. But number two, everybody, including the referees out there, are trying their best. And that's okay. You can boo a bad call. All right. But, you know, the stuff we hear, and, you know, Ben and I, we've been doing it long enough, so we don't hear it anymore, right? We can block it out.
Yeah,
We don't have the rabbit ears.
Yeah.
I think it's funny.
And-
I laugh at it, honestly.
and I do too, right? Because we know how to deal with it, right? But a young official
for
who's been
sure,
doing it 2 or 3 years and is getting hammered, why do you want to put up with this abuse?
Yeah.
So just remember that the next time you go to the, you know, we're in baseball and softball season now, right? So you go to that, the ump blows a call, all right, you know, let them know, but, you know, just...
Yeah, that's one thing in sports overall. I wish everybody could understand that it's a human thing, and it's a practice on every part of the court, whether it's refereeing, playing. It's a practice. It's an ongoing thing. Everybody's making mistakes. Everybody's trying to do their best, and that's like, I don't know where you guys land on like the instant replay and those types of things. And to me, I feel like that dilutes the game, the humanality of the game. But that's just me. Like, you know, when you see now, like, colleges have so many replays, and the pros, who knows how much.
If you want to watch an NBA game, you know, prepare to sit on that couch for 40 minutes to get through the last 4 minutes of the game. It's crazy.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, they're checking everything.
Yeah.
It's like, really?
And that to me, just like, I don't know. Like, I get that you want the purest game, I guess, but to me, without taking away that human part, and like, just the idea that, you know, kids can play on the playground. There's no instant replay.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's not even a ref a lot of times. And to me, you kind of get that, like, it just makes the professional or those higher end games of college and whatnot, like, further away from what they're aspiring to. You know what I mean?
There's no replay in Connecticut except
okay.
Last second shot, I think, and only in the final.
Only in
right?
the finals, yeah.
So there's nothing else.
You're talking for high school?
Yeah, high school. It hasn't crept down. College, I've got some boning up to do, because this year they're really implementing about 12 scenarios where either there can be appeals from coaches or we have to go to a monitor. So it's even jumping down into the lowest levels of college, Division III, that sort of thing. So, but
and this year more schools are going to have replay available. Even though last year, like a lot of the D3 schools, you could challenge or appeal or anything like that, but they didn't have cameras in the gym, so it didn't really matter.
Right.
Gotcha.
They're all spending the money now to do it, because that's the direction the sport's going. Very different from law. Law, you're supposed to get it right. You know,
right.
I mean, you know, it's not like basketball refereeing, where I think the statistic is the NBA refs get about 93 to 94% of the calls right during the game. So 6%, they're screwing up.
Yeah.
You know? But when you're making 300 or 400 judgment decisions in a game,
right.
You know,
yeah, that's 93% of calls and non-calls. So
Right.
like
Yeah.
you didn't blow your whistle where you shouldn't have blown your whistle.
Right. You know, the law, if I'm only getting 93% right, you know, 93% of the closings, 7% I'm screwing up, that's a problem.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you got to be right. You know,
Right.
so,
Right.
and
Yeah.
if you don't know the answer, you research it. And if it's not your area of expertise, you get it to somebody else, you know, unless you're going to just start a brand new part of your practice. You know, there's some lawyers that just do one very narrow focus their entire career. That's a little harder to do in Northeast Connecticut. The needs of the residents.
Same with real estate.
Right.
If I was going to be all equestrian properties,
Yeah, exactly.
you'd be pretty broke.
Right,
You know?
exactly. So, you know, but I make sure that in the 5 or 6 areas I practice that I'm on top of it.
Yeah.
Because you have to be. You know, and you got to know when you don't know so that you can go then research it or ask the questions or figure it out.
Right. Right. Right.
Is that the same for like criminal law? Like we talked a little bit about like DUI cases and that kind of stuff, but do you like if it was a area of criminal law that you weren't sure about, you would pass that along to somebody else? Or is criminal law
No.
criminal law?
Well, the procedure is the same, right? The rule book in terms of evidence and that sort of stuff is pretty much the same for all of that. The substantive part, you know, in terms of what the state has to prove, because we're in the United States, the state has to prove the case, not the defense.
Yep.
You're innocent until you're proven guilty in this country, as opposed to Russia, where you know, they just lock you up, and then you've got to fight to prove that you were innocent. So, you know, it's you might have to learn some substantive. You know, what are the special defenses here that I can use and that sort of thing. But it's basically the same. There's a couple of areas of criminal law I don't handle. I don't handle sexual assaults or sex crimes. I chose not to years ago because I had 3 young children and decided that I didn't want to have to explain to them as a youngster if they had learned that I was representing someone who was accused of those crimes to explain to them why I was doing that. I just thought it would have been too difficult a conversation to have with my young children. So I don't do that. I don't do violence against children. But just about everything else I've done.
Have you done murders?
I've done an attempted murder and got a not guilty by reason of insanity. It was a suicide by cop. It's the kind of case we call it, where the defendant was out at you know, a public place with a couple of buddies of his, and he had a gun, and he wanted to die, and he basically held his buddies hostage, let one of them call the police, and then held them hostage with the gun until the police showed up, and they about 6 state troopers showed up, and the standoff remained until he pointed the gun at one of the officers, and I think might have been getting ready to fire, and the officer shot first, disabled him, didn't hurt him badly, fortunately, disabled him, but they charged him with attempted murder of an officer. He was looking at 40 years.
Wow.
No criminal record, but had a huge mental health history.
Okay.
And was clearly suicidal. And, you know, my job was to provide him a defense. And one of the defenses is not guilty by reason of insanity. And, you know, and at the time he was in the middle of committing that crime, he didn't, you know, he wasn't in control of his faculties. He couldn't reason right or wrong. And that was my opinion, but we had to hire a forensic expert, you know, who evaluated him, and
The psychologist?
psychologist,
Forensic
yeah, forensic psychologist, who evaluated him and did a huge report. We had a big hearing, and the judge ultimately ruled that, you know, he was not sane at the time that he was doing this, and he spent a number of years at Whiting in Middletown, which was the main psychiatric hospital that the state used, and rehabilitated himself. And now the guy is, you know, I think he was there for about 10 years. But he's had a productive life since. As far as I know, he's never gotten arrested again. He's got a child. He operates. He's not in this area, so I'm not, you know, spilling any beans. It's not like someone's going to know who this is, because there's attorney-client privilege. But operates an auto repair shop and is doing pretty well.
Nice.
So, you know, that's some of that satisfaction, right? You know,
Yeah.
you know, I helped make sure this guy could get the help he needed,
Right. And not spend 40
and
years.
not spend, you know,
And who knows where his mental health would have gone.
Right.
Sitting in a cell.
right. And, you know, he gets out, you know, good behavior, gets out 20, 25 years in or something, you know, after, you know, and all of a sudden now he's 40, no skills, Mental health is still a mess.
Yeah.
Now what?
Right.
Now we got
right,
a career criminal probably.
Right. Right.
So
And you said
Wow.
on that case that the judge declared that he was. So is that a difference between a trial with a judge and with a jury?
the defendant has the right to select whether they want the case tried before a judge and a jury. And in this case, I counseled him and ultimately helped him make the decision. We were better off in front of a judge, because you didn't want, you have a jury of 6 and then 3 alternates. That's the way Connecticut works. We used to have juries of 12 on death penalty cases, but Connecticut no longer has a death penalty. So it's juries of 6. And I just felt that a judge who really would know the law, right? There's a difference between, legal insanity and what, you and I generically might think is someone is insane.
Yeah.
Right. And so I wanted to make sure that because I really believe that he qualified under the statute and the definitions in the statute. So we elected to have a judge at that point.
Right.
So-
Because if you got 12 jury members,
6 jury members,
or
I
6
don't know,
jury members that may or may not
yeah.
know. Do you get that decision every case?
On the criminal side, you do, and on the civil side too. One or the other party can elect a jury, and it happens. On the criminal side, it's up to the defendant.
Wow.
The state doesn't get to choose. There's a couple of charges where it has to go before a 3-judge panel, that sort of thing. But most cases that are criminal in nature.
What would be a
defendant
3-judge panel?
They've got one going on right now. I'll have to think about that for a
Is it like a
second, 'cause
violent?
I can't remember.
Violent
No,
crime?
no,
Or
it's
like
it,
embezzlement?
no, it has to do with mental health, that sort of thing.
Oh, okay.
I know what it is. It's competency. It's a competency hearing. So is the defendant able to assist the lawyer in his defense or her defense? Can they understand the proceedings, or are they just incompetent? They're legally incompetent, mentally incompetent. In which case, the charges are suspended. And there's a ruling by the 3-judge panel as to whether or not that individual is restorable. And if they're restorable, they go to a mental health facility, it's typically Whiting, for a couple of years typically, and they help them restore their mental health back to the point that they can understand what's going on. And they can assist their lawyer in their defense.
Wow.
In which case the charges then
Think about
continue.
that decision as a judge.
That's it. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And if you're not restorable, then you end up at Whiting for the rest of your life, right?
Yeah.
In a mental health facility.
That's a big decision.
Right. So I'm not entirely certain, but I believe so. That's the only 3-judge panel situation going on.
Can that be like, let's say the 3 judges say you're not restorable, 10 years at Whiting, you are restored, so to speak. Is there an appeal process?
It's not an appeal at that point, but you ask for a hearing on competency. You can get a competency hearing at that point to determine.
And they just do regular tests, and then it's kind of a pass or
There'd
fail.
be a hearing again. There are always appeals, but appeals happen, shortly after that decision or verdict.
There's a
It's
certain timeline.
Yeah, exactly. There's a timeline, and if the trial court got it wrong, then you can go up the ladder.
Right, because I would imagine if you're at Whiting and you're doing well, there's going to be advocates there for you saying, this person has been restored.
Right.
So that, at least I don't know. I think about like both sides of it. The judge having to make that decision. Well, is it irrevocable? You know what I mean? Is there a way?
Yeah.
'Cause if you're wrong,
Yeah,
I mean, how horrible is that?
The defendant
they
can
become
the defendant
sane
can ask
and they
for a
have to
hearing.
stay
Yeah,
there.
no. The defendant can have a hearing to have his competency restored legally. Yeah.
Nice. So that's good.
So that's the criminal stuff, but
Yeah.
the civil stuff, we go into the probate courts, things like guardianships and the court has adoption procedures, probating estates, conservatorships, either voluntary or involuntary conservatorships.
Wow.
I've got a client right now that happens to be another DUI client, but I've also had one fairly recently in a real estate transaction, and this person needs a lot of help. Can't really balance a checkbook anymore, can't find things, kind of get lost in the roadways, that sort of thing, but has no family. So you have the discussion either with the friend, with that individual, or maybe it's the realtor or something, and what are we going to do to help this person, right? And you have a discussion with that individual, and if that individual understands they need some help, well, then you can go into the probate court and have a voluntary conservatorship appointed, where someone, it's essentially like a court-appointed power of attorney, right?
Yeah.
If it's voluntary, that individual doesn't lose their rights. They can still act, but you've got this conservator who can also act on their behalf and can make sure that things are happening the way they are.
Sounds like being married.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Thank you to my wife for voluntarily
Being your
conservating me.
That's right. Being your conservator. But involuntary conservatorship is oftentimes the person can't make the decisions or should be conserved and just as opposed, and that's when it can get a little contentious. But the court, appoints an attorney for that person to represent their rights, and there is an evaluation done by either their doctor or a doctor appointed by the court. And if the doctor says, "Oh yeah, this person needs help, can't do it by themselves," then the court can appoint an involuntary conservator, in which case you've lost your ability to handle your banking. You've lost your ability to make your medical decisions.
Wow.
And the conservator does that. And especially someone might have Alzheimer's or something, doesn't have family.
Yeah.
So don't think of it in necessarily a bad way.
Right.
It's
No.
it's a good thing.
Believe me.
Potentially.
I love having a conservator.
Yeah, I know. That's right. Your wife doesn't like it so much, but
Yeah, right. No, I get that, and does that mean there are some conservatives that are professional conservators?
there is a woman right now that's a conservator in two of my matters that I've got, and that's all she does.
Wow.
She's an attorney, and she has a shop in Manchester, and she is essentially a professional conservator. And I don't know how many clients she's got. I think it's 50 or 60 clients. And
So would you say that's somebody that really leaned into the counseling part of law? To be that, an advocate for these
certainly it's someone that cares, right?
Okay.
So is the satisfaction they're getting out of it is they're helping people. At that point, it depends. If the individual is being conserved is still somewhat with it, then yes. You've got other situations where advanced dementia.
Yeah.
The person doesn't know what's happening going on.
Right,
There's
right,
no
right.
counseling going on there. But
Yeah.
But for
I
those,
see what you're saying.
yeah,
Because
but-
then they're not getting that.
right. But for those, those situations where someone's kind of, a borderline case, that's, you don't want to scare the person. You don't want to think that they're losing control, even though they are. But oftentimes the involuntary conservator, even though that person doesn't have rights that they're the conservator for, you can still talk to them and find out what they're thinking, and work with them to try and make them feel comfortable, right? You're the one making the decisions, but they can have some input.
Yeah.
So in that regard, I think you're right.
Yeah. Okay. That's wild. What's it like being in a court of law? Is it like a performance? How much prep work goes into something like that? Okay, so we'll start with the other thing that I was thinking about is there are so many laws in this nation and state. Not one person can read them all in a lifetime.
No.
So then I feel like what you were saying, where in education they don't really teach you the laws because having you memorize a certain few of them, you may never even see them.
Right.
So I kind of get it. Okay, now you got to go research because of the situation. You got to find the laws that apply to that situation.
Right.
And that there's a part of me that's like, okay, I can't learn all the laws, so why do I have to follow them?
Ignorance of the law is no
Isn't
excuse.
is the idea that ignorance of the law is no excuse?
It is not.
But,
It's not a defense.
But how do I know that walking out getting my own mail is not illegal?
Because you've seen other people do it, right? And a lot of that's law, right? I go into a courtroom, I watch other lawyers.
Okay.
I watch the judges. You learn what works and what doesn't work, right? The substantive, you got to do the research, and if you don't know, you ask questions.
Yeah.
And I'm still doing that 31 years in, and every now and then I'm like, there's got to be a better way to do this, or I don't know the answer to this question. Let me ask this guy or this gal, because I know they've been doing it for a long time as well, and hopefully we put our heads together. And there's continuing legal education. In Connecticut, the legislature smartly, about 10 years ago, passed a law that says we must do continuing legal ed. You think all lawyers?
Oh, you didn't have to until 10 years?
You did not have to.
I thought you were about to tell me you got more strict or
Yeah.
more substance.
Oh no, you didn't
than
have to.
classes.
Now it's a requirement.
And how are the classes? Are the classes good?
I went to one the other day. It was a workers' comp thing. It was a half-day seminar taught by some very good people. 95% of it I knew, but there were a couple of nuggets there that I'm like, oh, hey, I can use that. I already know I've got 4 clients that I can use that with, or oh, I didn't know it worked that way. I mean, you just, and the law is constantly evolving, right? And it changes, whether because the legislature has passed a statute or there's been a constitutional amendment, or the courts have said this is the correct way to interpret something, right? So you have to stay up on that stuff. And that's why you can't be a complete generalist, because there's just too much. There's too many areas of the law out there. There's
too many gray areas. Is that what you mean?
well, there's too many areas. I mean, you can't know everything about zoning and real estate and personal injury and workers' comp and constitutional law and contract law and mergers and acquisitions. There's too many areas of the law.
Okay.
You can't be a jack of all trades and master of none, right?
Yeah.
I think where I am, I've got 5 or 6 areas. I've been able to, I can stay on top of that.
You've honed it really
Right.
well. I know being in a closing with you, I mean, so fluent with closing disclosures, and I don't know if real estate is that complicated when it comes to a simple.
Yeah, it
closing,
can be.
but,
I mean, a closing itself is,
you're very fluid. And,
yeah,
fluent?
I mean,
I don't know.
there's some lawyers that need an hour to get through a residential closing. I can do one in 25 to 35 minutes.
Yeah.
Right. Because I know what's in that mortgage document. I've seen that mortgage document because it's generally the same form. It's the Connecticut single family Fannie Freddie form that we see all the time. And so what's in it. So, and the first thing I do is ask the client, have you done this before? Have you ever closed on a house before? If the answer is no, then I know it's my job to explain more, because versus the one that's flipped houses, and so this is their 30th closing. Well, all right, I mean, I don't just say sign here, but
and I was gonna say, like, you can close them quick, but understand when you're at the closing table, there is always pause breaks for questions, and and you're very understanding and empathetic to anything that might need further explaining. So, like,
years ago, this is my uncle now, different practice of law, and back then the lawyer told the client, this is what you're going to do. I know best. This is what you're going to do. And it didn't matter whether it was some settlement, you're fighting with your neighbor, and this is the settlement. Okay, the other lawyer and I have talked. This is what you're going to sign. This is the best thing for you. And back then, that's the way it worked. He used to tell a story. The criminal courts used to be town courts back then. The courthouse bar and grill in Putnam, that was the Putnam courthouse.
Right.
That was the Putnam criminal court, right?
And you were practicing law
every
back
town had
then?
one. No.
Oh.
I'm old, but I'm not that old. But he used to tell the story. I forget what day of the week it was, but Willimantic was a certain day. They'd all go down to Willimantic, the courthouse, which is where there's a pub there. It's kind of right near the town hall.
Oh,
Are you talking about-
Willimantic Brewing.
Willimantic Brew.
Willie Brew?
That was the courthouse.
I thought that was a post.
Post office.
Post office. Maybe it wasn't the courthouse, but
Yeah,
a building like that. They'd all go, and all the lawyers would get together, and they'd argue and bluster, and put on a show for the clients during the morning. They'd have the lunch break, and the lunch break was all the lawyers getting together, including the judges. It was a 2-martini lunch. They'd sit there and work the deals out, and they'd come back at 1:00 and tell the clients, okay, we've worked out your criminal case. This is what you can do it. They put it all on the record, and then by 2:30 they're all on the golf course.
Oh my goodness.
That was what was done. My job isn't to make the decision for you. My job is to give you all the facts and give you the recommendations as to the various options you've got and why I think this is the best option for you. But you're the client.
Right.
You make the decision. I'm not going to tell you whether you've got to plead guilty. I'm not going to tell you whether you should settle for X numbers of dollars or whether you should, this divorce agreement is fair.
Yeah.
That's your decision, right? But my job is to make sure you're in the best possible place to make those decisions, that you can get the best possible result to make that decision. That's my job.
Yeah. And that kind of just to go back on, I don't know if this helps anybody, like comparing it with real estate, especially when it comes to lots, when people want to buy raw land.
Right.
Some of them will ask me, well, is this a good lot to build on? And I can't make that decision.
Right.
But I will tell you, okay, it's going to cost at least 50 grand to get your utilities in and your driveway in. Okay. And most of the time, that's not part of the loan. Like, that's the capital that you need. There are some products out there now that are one-time close where you're basically buying a house that the builder just about owns.
Yep.
Until you close on it. But I'll counsel people in that way. Like, it's not my decision as to whether or not this soup bowl with wetlands is buildable or not, and the lot is way out there, and you're going to basically need a bridge and whatnot to get out there. It's mine is okay. Let's find the facts about it and how, and then even if we have to, we'll get quotes to see how much money it's going to cost to get there, to get it to be a buildable lot. Right. And then, we can get quotes from contractors too to see how much, the 3-bedroom, 2-bath house is going to be, or whatever, whatever it is that you want. And then it's kind of up to you. Is the juice worth the squeeze is what it comes down to. Right. And that's definitely them. And same thing when I have buyers if you're signed with me, my sales part is over. You've taken up me as your realtor. That's my service. If you're in a house and you're not feeling it for whatever, it checks all your boxes, but you just still don't get the vibe that it's your home, let's leave.
Even though you think it's the perfect house for them, but that's their decision.
It's
their house.
Go. I will never. And the other thing is, well, I don't want to waste any. I get a lot of people that I don't want to waste your time. No. It's not a waste of time. We got to go. We'll go look at it. If you have even the slightest idea that you might like it, because I've gotten people in the houses that check none of their boxes and they just love it. They just love the vibe. They love the feel of it. And obviously I would have never known that, you know what I mean? So,
yeah.
So I totally get that whole like counseling part versus, when people ask you things that really your opinion doesn't matter. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's not my opinion. It's this is your options. Let's just make sure I try to get you as much of the facts as possible so that you can make the decision.
And you hit on something, that's applicable in my practice, at least the way I run my office. You say the client says, "Oh my God, we're wasting time." You say, "No, this is important. I'll spend as much time as I need with you." Well, it's the same thing with my office. You could have, well, we'll talk personal injury for a minute. Okay. Case is worth $1 million. There's $1 million policy there. It's a catastrophic injury. And that case is worth that $1 million. Person's never going to work again. Got huge, medical problems for the rest of their lives. Yet you come on in and, the other client comes in and they've been rear-ended but it's their only car. They have no way to get to work. They're not that badly hurt. They're going to recover. But, for a couple of months, they got the little one at home and it hurts to lift the baby up or it hurts to go grocery shopping. And, they gotta have the neighbor cut the lawn because they can't do it. They have to cancel the vacation because, they're not going to be able to walk around Disney for,
right.
2 days or whatever. That case is only worth, I don't know, whatever, a small amount of money.
Yeah.
That client is just as important to me as the client that has the $1 million case.
For sure.
It doesn't matter. Yeah. Every client, and I know our office does a great job with that. I have great staff, and they treat everybody the same. And every client is the most important client the moment we're dealing with their case and talking to them.
Yeah. And I will second that. Shout out to Melinda French.
Oh yeah, she's fantastic. She's been doing real estate for years.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I've always talked about with people when it comes to hiring a lawyer. Do they brief their staff? Where honestly, no offense, but I feel like Melinda knows more about the cases than you do when it comes to real estate. And when you call and real estate, you need to get a hold of somebody. You have questions. So if she doesn't know the answer, obviously,
right,
she's gonna ask you. But just like
And the
staff,
paralegal is
that
the
communication has to be
right.
between you and your staff, and that's one reason why you're always on the top of my recommendation list, because I know I can get a hold of somebody when there's a question.
Right.
And I tell my clients, I said, listen, if you're going to be up thinking about this, just call me or text me.
Right.
Just do it. I'd rather me take 10 seconds to answer your question than you stay up all night. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for
Like,
sure.
I don't care if it's 10 o'clock at night.
I have great staff. Melinda French has been doing real estate just about as long as I have, with a couple of different attorneys. She's been with me for, I don't know, a dozen years now anyway. And yeah, she knows as much as I do. If the lawyer needs to make the call, she brings me in. I'm the one that handles the closing. I'm the one that reviews the title search. I'm the one that handles the legal issues. But she's the one who's dealing with the client for the first weeks or month or so until we get to closing. She's the one who's working with the bank, the loan officer, to make sure that the numbers are right, and putting the file together. She's fantastic. Tracy Dunn in my office has been doing, litigation, mostly, personal injury work, for almost as long as I have. She's phenomenal. She's great with the clients. She will get the information she needs from you. She will stay on top of the files. She is empathetic. She is sympathetic. She is, she's fantastic. She prepares the files, the right way, and does a great job. I just hired a woman. She's been with me for about 5 months now. Kimberly Sharon. She lives out in the Wyndham area. Worked for a Hartford firm for years, and she's with me now. She's doing estate work and real estate work, and she's tremendous.
Nice. Wealth
Of knowledge. She's about the same age as me, probably been doing it almost as long, and just does a great job. And she's personable, and she's good with the clients. I have another young lady that has been with me about the same amount of time, and I'm tickled to death she's with me. And she won't be with me that long, probably 3 or 4 years, maybe 5 years, because she wants to be a lawyer.
Okay.
Ellie Morissette, Putnam girl, valedictorian of her class, went to UConn, wants to be a lawyer, worked for a firm in the New London area and really didn't like it. And between that and the fact that the commute is now, 10 minutes instead of 45,
Yeah.
she's with me. She's fantastic. One of the brightest people that I've ever had working for me, and just really smart, and just absorbs the knowledge like a sponge, and is great with clients. Cassidy Martin, she's out in the Hampton Way. She worked, I was lucky, another young woman, very smart lady, worked for me for 4 or 5 years and is now a school teacher, but she'll come back in the summers and kind of covers for some vacations and stuff, but she's great too. It's really my staff right now, 1 through 5, is probably the best staff I've ever had.
Wow. Good for you, man. That's awesome.
It's great, and it makes my job so much easier. It takes some stress away from me. I drive them crazy, but and I do.
Yeah,
I do.
yeah.
There's no doubt about it.
Spend some money on that administrative appreciation day.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. That's something I started doing. Old school. My uncle didn't do any of that. In fact, this is a crazy story, but he had a phenomenal secretary. He only had one. Back in the days of carbon, the carbon paper and the
Carbon copies.
carbon copies and all that stuff. So you didn't do as much work because you just couldn't get the work out. Right now,
Right.
that's the bane of our electronic existence. Now you can do a million things, and so we're all busier. But her husband died, and he knew the husband. They lived locally, and they go to the funeral, go to the wake, and he turns to her and he says, "Okay, I'll see you at the office later this afternoon." She says, "What?"
Oh my goodness.
I'm not coming back to the office. I'm taking the week off. He says, "Well, what am I going to do?" She says, "You're going to take the week off too, apparently." Different time. But this young woman who's come, Ellie, she's like, why don't we, do some fun stuff together, bonding stuff. I've never done any of that. So anyway, so we're going to be, probably going to Topgolf, and we're probably going to be, doing some axe throwing and that sort of stuff.
Nice.
And a few years ago, I started to close the office down on Fridays afternoons at 1 o'clock from Memorial Day to Labor Day, and give them a longer weekend. We still get as much work done. I'm still there.
Yeah.
most of the time. I don't get the Fridays off completely, but they do. And once a month now, we all get together for lunch, and we don't talk shop. They get to pick where we're going to lunch. It's on me, and we have we just have a barrel of laughs, and
That's awesome.
we have a 2-hour lunch, and part of it is because that's the way it should be if you're going to be a good boss, I think.
Yeah.
But part of it is I'm so thankful I have these 5 people.
Yeah.
And just decided a couple of months in, about 3 months ago, that we wanted to do some of this fun stuff. She suggested a little of it, but it's just
Now,
it's
is
great.
Is that something? I don't know how it all works with like partnership, or what? Like, would that be like when she becomes a lawyer? Would that
If she wanted to come back in the area, and wanted to practice similar types of law and wanted to be in Northeast Connecticut, I'd love to have her back. Bring her, I'd bring her in probably as an associate, right?
Okay, so I was just going to
Yeah,
ask, how does
yeah,
that work?
yeah.
Like, she would be basically your employee.
She'd be an employee,
Lawyer,
in all likelihood. She'd be a lawyer, and the trick is there, I think, to make sure they have opportunity. Right? It's not supposed to be a dead end.
Right.
And there are lawyers in the area that have done that to associates.
Yeah.
It's dead ends. They stay associates, and so they finally get disgruntled and they leave. And it's not supposed to be like that. I mean, I was really lucky. It was my uncle, but he brought me in as a partner.
Oh,
I
brought
came
you
in
right
day one. I was 50% partner.
Wow.
It was
With no clients.
or 49% partner. He was 51.
With no clients.
No clients.
That is
I
lucky,
almost
I
no
feel like.
experience, no clients, no capital to bring in. He had all of that. He had the experience, he had the clients, he had the capital, and I got really lucky. It's hard to be a lawyer setting up your own shop as a young attorney.
Yeah.
It really is hard.
But also,
but I had that advantage.
But also, I mean, he probably saw something in you that, you would carry it on, legacy.
Yeah,
type of
I think
thing.
so.
But also, I'm sure it gave him a certain amount of relief to have a partner, especially one that he could trust.
Yeah.
And that, obviously you've done a great job with,
Yeah.
with,
And I'm getting to that
practice,
point.
you know.
I mean, I'm not 35 anymore. I don't really care. My kids have asked me that. None of them are going to be lawyers.
No.
My oldest, she's just moved to Florida. She's a biologist. She was in Louisiana for a few years, working for their Department of Fisheries. The state of Florida has hired her for her python eradication division.
Oh,
She is going to be in the Everglades.
yeah.
You
That's a big deal right now.
Oh, it's a huge deal, and they're
Yeah.
going to be out there. They a lot of the males apparently they track, so they take them to the nests, and they can, because if you can destroy 200 eggs,
Yeah.
you're not you have 200
So it's
less
for
pythons.
euthanization.
Yeah, but they're going to be out there at times wrangling these snakes that are trying to constrict you, and they're teams of 2 and 4, and they've got these air pellet guns, and you shoot the snake in the head, you kill it. They're invasive species. They don't belong
Yeah.
there.
Oh, God, yeah.
They're eating
Yeah.
all the alligators. Before anyone gets upset that we're killing snakes, these snakes don't belong there.
Right,
And they're killing
yeah.
all the alligators. They're killing the crocodiles. They're killing the deer. They're killing everything.
It's
They're
something like
wiping the Everglades out.
90% of the small animals
Yeah.
are gone.
Are gone because
Yeah.
of these snakes.
Yeah.
So that's her job. My middle daughter, in fact, she just flew back today. She's a student at Oxford. She's getting her doctorate. She's a marine archaeologist. She gets in the wetsuit. She goes and dives under the water and sifts around these wrecks and figures out what's going on down there. And her name is Emma. Her tagline is Indie Emma Jones, and it's great.
Oh, my God.
It's great.
That's awesome.
But
And you guys are all certified scuba divers, right?
I'm not. I'm the only one who's
Oh,
not.
I thought you were.
And
with them.
I was a lifeguard. I was a swimming instructor. I taught lifeguards, taught swimming instructors. So I've always been around the water, but I've not gotten my
Oh, I
scuba.
thought you guys all went scuba diving
No.
together.
Yeah, that's
for one of
going to
big
happen,
trips.
but I haven't done
Yeah.
it yet. But she was in the country of Georgia the last week as a doctoral student presenting her master's thesis, which is going to get published, and another paper that the dig head said, go ahead and you present it. That's going to get published. She's living large. She's living in Europe, and she's probably going to be there for a while, and just doing a great job. My son, he's still local, but doesn't want to be a lawyer. Right now, he's rehabbing his grandfather's house with the builder because that's going to be where he's going to move, and learning those trades and those skills. And one of my daughters asked me 10 years ago, Dad, are you going to be upset that one of us isn't going to take the practice over? And I said, no, I want you to be happy.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
you want to be a ditch digger and that's what gives you pleasure, then that's what I want you to do.
Right, right, right.
And that's what these three kids are doing. They're finding, what you work for so long, right?
Yeah.
40 years, sometimes more than that. If
Yeah.
you're not happy,
Yeah,
so
over 30 of
so
life.
so I told him, I said, and hopefully I have an associate that wants to take the practice over, and but if not, when I'm ready to retire, the day I lock the door, it's been a good career, and I've helped a lot of people and derived satisfaction of it, and been able to make a living, and that's what it's all about, right?
Yeah, yeah. I will say, if you go for a scuba diving class, let me know.
All right,
I'd
Sounds
love-
good.
I'd love to take it.
That's on my bucket list. What's on my bucket list? I'm going to start. I think sooner. I don't know if sooner than that, but I want to get a pilot's license.
I would encourage sooner than later.
Yeah, that's true.
Same thing. Bucket list.
yeah.
Tried stand-up comedy and love it.
Yeah, you won't catch me up there. That's something that's amazing. I watched you guys, and
Yeah.
I'm like, there is no way in hell that I'm going on stage doing that. And it's weird
funny.
because I have no problems being in a courtroom.
Right, and that's why I was kind of getting at
Yeah.
that. Is it a performance? How much prep time is in it? How much?
Well,
The same with the referee thing.
Yeah.
Like you could have everybody in one room booing you.
I wouldn't call it a performance, okay?
Okay.
Because, as a commissioner of the Superior Court, right, that's our formal title. We get a commission from the court. The Superior Court is the trial court. So that's our license. And, the first rule is you're supposed to be truthful with the court.
Mm-hmm.
You're not supposed to embellish. You're not supposed to lie. I may choose that these are the facts I want to emphasize that are the best for my client. I may try to discredit facts on the other side that I don't think are accurate. I'm going to make the most persuasive argument I can, but I don't lie to the court.
Right.
And if I have a client that wants me to lie to court, you're not going to be my client any longer.
Right. Yeah. There's
Okay.
definite ethical laws.
Yeah, right.
Both our licenses.
So
that.
Now, having said that, do you have to know how to behave in front of the court, right? Do you, the first thing I do before every case, I might have 7 cases on in front of that judge, one after another. The first thing I do is I say, "Good morning, Your Honor," and I pause because I'm not just saying it as some rote, thing.
Right.
I'm actually, "Good morning, Your Honor."
Yeah.
It's nice to be here. It's nice to see you. You don't get into that because you got business to do. But
Right.
and then Attorney Christian Sarantopoulos for the defendant, so and so, and we're off and running.
Mm-hmm.
So you learn how to act,
Yeah.
and you learn how to behave, and you learn what's effective, and that's, I guess, if you want to call it the performance, right? What's going to be the most effective way to convey your argument, to make that argument, to make your point.
Yeah. Sorry, I used the word performance.
No, it's okay.
I'm sure that's wrong.
It's okay. I just don't want people to think that you're putting on a show.
Right. And then the other idea of like wordsmithing. It's something that it's kind of a dormant hobby, but it's
Oh,
really,
you got to wordsmith.
but it's right for me. I was just talking
Yeah.
like it's kind of a
Yeah.
dormant hobby, and it's coming out more now that I was kind of like I let myself get pushed into the stand-up comedy thing, because I wanted.
There's no way I could do that.
And to me, it's like this. For me, it's definitely a performance. It's an act.
Right.
It's real life embellished. That was the best advice I've ever gotten was just lean into who you are, talk about it,
Right.
and
But I can get up in front of a judge or a jury.
right.
I don't have a problem with that.
And I would be scared.
And it's the prep, right?
Yeah.
You know your material, you know the facts, you know the law, the argument you want to make.
For sure.
I'm part of the Northeast Connecticut Community Choir. We just had our spring concert Saturday.
So you sing.
Well, I'm a male. I'm loud. I can read music.
Wow. That's
Am I a
impressive.
good singer? I don't really think so. But I will say this: I like doing it with other people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No solos for you.
It's like I did one last Christmas, a very short thing that the director basically said, "You are doing this," and I'm like, "I don't want to do it." She says, "You're doing it," so I got through it.
Such a
and it-
persuasive
yeah,
lawyer.
and it was, yeah, no, I lost, and it was in the middle. It was in the middle of the piece. It was quick. It was, but scared to death.
Yeah.
But we sang for about an hour and 20 minutes, about 14 or 15 pieces. It was a great concert. It was over the Luce Center, and in front of 700 or 800 people. Didn't bother me, but I'm with a group. I'm not, I'm not doing what you're doing, the stand-up comedy or getting on the stage and singing a whole song. I can't do that.
Yeah.
I can't do that.
I don't know about the singing part, but the idea, and
I'd love to see you sing on a stage. What do you think, Ben?
Yeah.
You don't
why
want
not,
me to
right?
see,
Yeah.
you don't want to see me sing in the shower with no one else around. That's even
Well,
no
yeah.
matter what.
I
still.
definitely don't want to see
We
you
don't
in
see you in the shower. That's right. No, no,
You don't want to
no.
see me even mouth a song in the car. 'Cause, I cannot memorize for the life of me. I cannot remember even my favorite song, like all the lyrics in a row.
Oh, I don't know.
Like,
the
I
lyrics.
cannot
Yeah.
do it.
No,
I,
no.
I and yeah, when you're singing along with the radio, there's definitely the mumble part that happens to me. My cousin used to bust on me hard about it. Like, you don't know the words?
There's a great British comedian. I can't remember his name right now, but his whole routine is
Oh,
going
yeah,
through the
And
lyrics.
then you can't unhear it.
No, you
It's
can't.
like his
Yeah.
big thing. He plays it on his phone.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, you've seen it. It's the
yeah.
same
Oh
thing.
God,
It's
yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
It's
He
absolutely
is hilarious. Yeah, he comes out with some crazy things of what they're way off of what they're actually saying, and
Right.
it's funny. Yeah,
Yeah, it is
you're right. But yeah, the trying to stand up in front of an audience and solicit one emotion is that I mean, they even said it when they were giving me the award. This was the most nervous, and I was just sitting there in a chair, quiet, staring at the floor, like, I can't believe I'm doing this. I can't believe I'm doing this. Like that
And
kind
you
of
went
thing.
out there and you were great. Yeah,
Thank you. I
it was good
appreciate
stuff.
that. I think I had a very sympathetic audience, as I kind of told most of my family they were coming.
And don't get me wrong, it's not that I'm not reading the audience, right? Especially, you should hire local. If there's an attorney that knows the area of practice that you need, you should hire local, because I know the local judges. Okay.
Yeah.
I know which judge we need to be in front of for this type of case. And oftentimes I can maneuver the calendar a little where I can make that happen. Or if I'm in front of that judge and I see the judge doing this while he's listening to me, I know I'm in big trouble if it's that particular judge. Or
You pick up on the tells like a poker game.
Right, exactly, exactly. I mean, a terrible, as you know, you take my money all the time. But I'm a terrible poker player, but it's the truth. And if you're in front of a jury, I know the people in Northeast Connecticut, right? I know what might work and what might not work. Now, there are some great lawyers in Hartford or New Haven or Bridgeport or wherever who are specialists in an area that we don't have lawyers in this area that do that kind of work. And so, absolutely, you call me, I don't know how to do it, I'm going to get you to someone, and it might be in the middle of the state if that's what you need. But, 9 times out of 10, you're better off with a local lawyer, because we know the players. We know,
for sure.
how to maneuver
Yeah.
all of that.
Now, how does that work with like jury selection? Because like, I don't know. I can't go to the coffee shop on any given day randomly and not run into somebody I know if it's more than just the barista.
Well, there's about 100,000
what I mean?
people in the county. I don't know everybody. We've lived here all our lives, but so because you're right. If when a jury selection happens, they bring about 40 people in on a day, and they've all filled out these questionnaires. They don't tell you a whole heck of a lot except who they are and maybe where they work and what they've done for a living, and have they been involved in the court system before, and that sort of thing. And you get up in front of the pool and you introduce yourself. Hi, I'm Attorney Sarantopoulos, and this is my client. And the people we might call as witnesses are X, Y, and Z, and A, B, and C. And if it's a insurance dispute, do you work for an insurance company? Have you ever had any disputes with insurance? Or if it's a criminal case, have you ever been arrested before? And you've ever had any interactions with the police? And anyway, so
you interview each jury?
it's called voir dire. And you have this general question period, and the judge then comes in and says, okay, who thinks they need to be excused because they know somebody? And about a third to half of the people raise their hands, and they have to say
And lie.
Well, you're not supposed to, right? They're put under oath.
I,
You know, you're not supposed to.
So you perjure yourself if
Yeah,
you lie.
well,
That's
you-
wild.
It's not good, but you know,
I-
I'm sure there are a few that do. And there's some, you know, they ask, you know, who's this going to create a financial hardship for? If you're self-employed, or, you know, you've got 3 little ones at home and no coverage, and you know, I mean, the court system excuses you, right?
Sorry, everyone. I throw caution. I'll be honest for sure, but I will throw caution to the wind because it's so interesting to me. I got chosen when I was like 22.
Yeah.
And I got dismissed at 8:30 before they had already picked.
Had they interviewed? Oh, they had picked everybody.
They picked everybody, and I got dismissed, and I was kind of heartbroken.
Well, you got time.
And
You got
they've
time.
never even. I've never gotten
If-
anything in the mail.
If
Nothing.
you have a driver's license, if you have, there's 3 or 4 ways that you end up on the list, and it's random, you know. And once you're selected to come in, or you're selected, and the night before when you call, they say we're not picking a jury that day. You're supposed to be excused for 3 years. Is the way it works. But after that pool is thinned out, then it's a one-on-one interview with me and the other lawyer, and we get to ask questions and
Yeah.
make sure that that person is an appropriate person for the case. I mean, you know, listen, if you're a if you're a criminal, you know, if I'm a criminal defense attorney,
Yeah.
and I've got someone there that thinks that the death penalty should be brought back not only for capital punishment cases but for anything, you know, their mentality is hang the bastards.
Oh.
Well, I'm not sure I necessarily want that person on my jury, or vice versa, right?
Yeah,
You know, someone comes in and thinks that the police are all bad people. I'm not sure the state's attorney wants.
It's that extreme opinion. You're trying to
weed that out, and
That's,
and
I'm like
and
the perfect juror, and they
the
won't pick me.
and the rest of it's kind of a crapshoot, right?
Yeah.
And you get 3 challenges for any reason.
Okay.
You can use, and sometimes you get a 4th. But once you're done with them, if you don't use them wisely, the next person that comes in
They're
might
going
not be
on.
very good, but they might go on. So,
Yeah.
so picking a jury takes, you know, typically 2-3 days to get those 9 people.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can get it done in a day, but that's really rare. So that's kind of how the jury process works.
And it does bring up a question. Ben wrote it down, but I'm going to ask anyway. You okay if I ask your question?
Sure.
No, you're here. Go ahead, ask it, because it's like the pivotal moment when you got to ask it
oh,
that you wrote down.
can lawyers be on juries?
Well, you can technically, but I don't know what lawyer's going to want me on a jury, because, you know, unless they think that I'm really with them, I'm going to have an easier time swaying the other 5 to that unanimous verdict than someone else might. Or they're going to look at me and say, well, this is the guy that knows what's going on, so what do you think? You don't want that, right?
Okay. So as a realtor, I'm a really good negotiator.
Right.
As you know. Maybe they're not picking me that way.
Well, maybe.
I got it on jury one time.
Okay.
Did you? What kind of case was it?
It was a civil case.
Yeah.
And it was siblings that were fighting over a house.
And did it go to verdict? Did you get to make a
No,
decision?
so we got picked. I was in Danielson. I got picked the day of the trial. We went to Willimantic. And they put us in the room, and we were there for like
and it's settled.
half an hour, and then the judge came in and was like, as this often happens, the realness of the trial, they settled on the case.
Okay.
So
I've never been part of that process. I had hoped early on, you know, before I became the lawyer, the first 4 or 5 years, you know, after I was 18, that I'd get selected. And it never happened. And I'll never get selected.
Yeah.
So
Well, I'm 43 or 42 for another month, and I've just always found it just fascinating. You know, the whole.
most people that
the
go
whole
through
part
it
of
enjoy it. The
Yeah.
hard part is you know, you can be away from work or family for, you know, 3 to 10 days, you know, so
Some of the what I feel like O.J. Simpson's case was like months.
Yeah.
So that jury was like out.
they were
their lives.
and they were sequestered, I think, which means they didn't get a chance to go home either.
Right.
That's very rare.
Yeah.
You know, the federal system, if you're selected, you're there for a month, and however many cases come in, they select a panel, and then from that panel, they'll take, you know, those that the attorneys think are appropriate for that case. So you might get stuck for a month if you're federal. So that's Hartford, Bridgeport, New Haven, the federal courts. The state courts, you're just selected for that one case. Most cases are 2 to 3 days. The criminal, some cases might go longer, a couple of weeks if it's really something complex. But most cases, you know, especially in this area, don't
Yeah.
go that long.
I remember my shop teacher at Ellis. He was out for one day for jury duty, and he actually sat next to somebody he knew, but he didn't. He surprisingly, because he's a first responder. He was an architect. Blah blah blah. He knew a lot of people in the area, but the only one that throughout the case he knew was sitting right next to him on the jury.
Oh, really? No kidding.
So it was kind of funny that way, but I forget, he did talk about it. And that just like, it always sparked my interest, that whole thing. Like, I used to watch Matlock with my dad, just like the argument of the case and the wordsmithing is such a big deal to me.
This was put to a vote, and I forget where. The American Bar Association, I think, did it. They wanted to know what lawyers thought was the most realistic trial movie of all time.
Okay.
And you're never going to guess what was number one.
I know what it is.
Hold on. It was one about the Florida gun laws.
Nope.
Nope.
No? Was it Runaway Jury?
Nope.
Wasn't Runaway Jury?
My Cousin
Yep.
Vinny.
My Cousin Vinny. Okay.
And they actually, some law schools will use that as part of a trial procedure class. When you look at the direct examinations and the cross examinations and the evidentiary rulings, they actually put it together where it's actually fairly realistic. Now it's comedic and it's
Such a great
exaggerated.
movie.
It's one of the best movies of all time. And it's like, you ask doctors, did you ever watch ER or something? And they say, oh no, come on, there's nothing real about it. It's the same thing for me. Most law shows I don't want to watch.
Suits?
No. The only one that I used to like was Boston Legal because it was more about the funny than it was the law, right?
Okay.
It was, the ridiculousness of it. But My Cousin Vinny, I think it's one of the classics. It's one of my top 10. Anyway, in terms of movies that I enjoy, and I've watched it a bunch of times, and it's the truth. I mean, the techniques that are used and are just spot on. And they use it. Some law schools use it as a good example of a cross examination. For instance. So
That's funny.
Yeah.
Well, I guess when you have a character like that, he's in the movie. He's like the lawyer you'd never hire,
Right.
Unless you had to.
And at the end, he ultimately does everything right.
Right.
And it's not because he researches everything; it's because his girlfriend researches everything, and she tells him what to do. Right. That's
right. But the idea of the
His
character,
conservator.
yeah, kind of like Matt's wife.
yeah, easy. I'll feed you some more of that bad bourbon. But just like the idea of having a character that is, I don't know, like bull in a china shop kind of, and obviously it's his nephews, right?
Right.
That have to hire him.
It's one of his nephews. Yeah, and his
Yeah,
buddy.
yeah, because they can't.
No, it's cousin. It's his cousin.
Oh, that's right. It is. Right. There you go. See, that's why he's here.
That's why he's here.
That's why he's here. Yeah.
No, that's right.
What's that movie? My nephew Vinny.
Yeah. So,
Well,
yeah.
even just down to like contempt of court.
Okay.
No,
Yeah, how
I
does that
mean-
work? I don't even really know.
Well, in the movie, right, he shows up disrespectful in the suit, and he tries to explain to the judge, right, that the reason he got it is because it's a one shop town, and he couldn't get a suit, so he shows up in this ridiculous thing, and he doesn't get held in contempt there, but shortly after, he's muttering under his breath, and pissing the judge off, and the judge throws him in contempt, and the next thing you know, he's in the the penitentiary.
Oh my goodness. So when you get contempt of court, that's jail?
It can be. They can. The judge has the right to fine you or lock you up until you post bail or until he brings you back the next day. And I've never. I don't know if I've ever seen a contempt here.
If the lawyer gets contempt.
Oh, the lawyer's got to do something really bad to get contempt. I don't know how often that happens.
But it's like that could be a career ruiner, right? Because you now have a criminal record.
Well, no, it's not a crime. It's a punishment for essentially misbehaving
In court.
towards the bench. It's not a crime.
Okay.
Yeah. no. But it's
So
still not
contempt
good.
of court still sucks, but
Oh, yeah.
it's not on your permanent record.
Well, I mean, I'm sure there's a way to research it.
A
Yeah.
witness refuses to give their
Well,
testimonial.
yeah, right. Well, if they're under subpoena and they refuse to testify, and I'm not talking about a defendant that has a right to not testify, right? The Fifth Amendment, you have a right to not.
Oh,
incriminate
okay. So I was just going to ask you
yeah, no,
where
no,
the
that's a
Fifth Amendment.
constitutional right.
So if I witness a crime and I'm called to court, I'm subpoenaed to court.
You could be held in contempt if you refuse to testify.
If I refuse
Yep.
to say,
Yep.
and
That-
it-
You know,
That's what the
Deal?
guy in the Barry Bonds trial got charged with.
right?
oh yeah, and that like if I refuse to say it, I could be in contempt for the rest of my life.
Well, eventually the court is going to ultimately stop the punishment at some point. But yeah, you could be locked up.
For a long time because you refuse to speak about what you saw.
Right. Right.
Wow.
There's a tension. We haven't had it recently, but years ago there was a tension between the freedom of the press, right? Whereas the press the reporter knows something and it involves a criminal investigation or something and refuses to testify because of the privilege, that privilege that the reporter has with the confidential informant.
Yeah.
And that tension between that right or that privilege and the requirement that you've been subpoenaed to appear in court and testify as to what you know. And the reporter refuses and the judge locks him up. Because you're under court order. It's a subpoena. You're there to testify, and you're not being charged. You have no right to invoke the Fifth Amendment. So, that's,
Huh.
it's
Is it more
regardless
often
of
a
what your
fine?
political persuasion. Yeah, it's fine.
So you could bankrupt
Well,
somebody
and right
over
now
this.
it's going on, and again, I don't want to get into whether it's right or wrong or indifferent because of the politics of it, but you're seeing a lot of it right now where judges are holding the current administration in Washington in contempt, and they're holding their lawyers in contempt because, arguments are being made in court to advance a political agenda, which happens on both sides. Again, I'm not trying to get political
Right,
here,
right.
but it's happening now, and the judges are saying that's a lie.
Yeah.
That's not truthful, and the judges are holding, or threatening to hold administration officials or their lawyers in contempt. Well, what does that mean? Well, the court could fine them. Court could lock them up.
What if the judge is wrong in saying it's a lie when it's not? Because they're
Well,
human too.
I'm
just asking.
There
I'm
are
not
appeals.
getting political.
No. But
Okay.
this is
Yeah.
it's a good discussion because the rhetoric is so high right now that we're going into places we shouldn't go. Judges can be wrong, and judges at times can be political. They're not supposed to be. Okay,
Right.
But on both sides, and it's not a one-side issue.
I was
It's
gonna say,
just-
don't
it's
they
just not.
pick the Supreme Court members based on
You're-
how they've ruled in the past, whether or not they're conservative or liberal?
The politics gets involved, absolutely.
Yeah.
On both sides.
Yeah.
But there's a remedy if a judge makes a mistake. It's called an appeal.
Yeah.
Okay. You go to the next higher court to say that judge was wrong, and you overturn the ruling. You don't threaten the judge. You don't, call the judge all kinds of names. You don't, you threaten their family. You don't, call for their removal. Okay. Because judges make mistakes, right? We're all human beings.
Right.
And that's the problem. We're the judicial system is not supposed to be, yes, getting selected into the judicial system at times is political, but at that point in time, the judge is supposed to put the black robe on and act as that third branch of government.
Yeah.
Okay, they're not the legislative branch. They're not the executive branch. They're not supposed to be, making laws from the bench, right? They're not legislators. They're not supposed to be, though, doing just what a president wants because they're not part of the executive. Right. They're an independent branch of government. It's what makes America great.
Yeah.
Okay? We don't have judges that do the bidding of the leader, like you do in Cuba and Russia and China and, all these places where people don't have rights.
Right.
And that fundamental, distinction between the branches is what keeps us free. It's what keeps our rights intact.
Yeah.
Okay.
They all hold each other accountable.
Exactly,
idea.
exactly. And it's got to be balanced. When one becomes too strong, it doesn't work that well. So the system readjusts. Connecticut, we talked about this before we jumped on. You asked me, how are judges selected in Connecticut? We've got one of the better systems in the country.
Okay.
Because it's not elected judges, which is a disaster. Okay? Because let's say you're a conservative individual in Connecticut, and Connecticut, for the most part, is not a conservative state. At least it hasn't been the last,
Couple of elections.
a few elections, right? We tend to be we're a blue state right now. So be it. That's what it is.
You're right.
So do you want elections to decide your judges? The judicial system's not supposed to be an extension of the politics.
Right.
So in Connecticut, what we do is, if you're an attorney and you want to become a judge, you've got to apply. And there's an application. It's like 46 questions. By the time you finish answering it, it's about your answers, and all the supporting documentation is 4 to 6 inches thick. It takes some lawyers years to complete it because it's so daunting and there's so much information. And that application goes in front of a judicial selection commission, which is about 15 people. About half of them are lawyers, but about half of them are not. And you sit for an hour or 2-hour interview, and they grill you.
Wow.
And after you're done, they vote yes or no. Are you qualified? Do you have the right temperament?
Yeah.
Which is just as important as the knowledge. And if they vote yes, you end up in a pool of 200 to 300 people.
Huh.
And that's the merit part of the process. Are you qualified? After that, it's political. We have this balance. So at that point, the governor gets to select, who's going to fill the vacancies at that point. And Connecticut's been pretty good. And, if you follow some of the politics in Connecticut, the Connecticut legislative system is not really that broken. It's not the partisan system that is the rest of the country. They stopped, and I forget what the bill was, but I read about it a couple of weeks ago. It was a bill that the Republicans, because they're in the minority now, couldn't stop. They could have filibustered it for 2 or 3 days, but ultimately it would become law. And the Democratic leader said, "We're not going to do that. We're going to open the amendments up. We're going to let them all talk. We're going to vote on every amendment." And they worked with them, and they made some changes that the Republicans happened to want. They didn't make all of them because they're not in the majority, but they worked the bill. And the Republican leader, when the bill was passed, a lot of the Republicans voted against it, but thanked the Democratic leader for saying, "Thank you for working with us. We didn't get to where we wanted to be, but it's better than what you started with." Right?
Right.
Well, the judicial system is similar in Connecticut. We have this merit-based process to make sure that most of the judges that get through this are qualified, number one. And then at that point, the governor gets the picks, but oftentimes they will let the minority party get a pick or two, right?
Okay.
And they give them something, and it's always been like that. So we've got a great hybrid system that a lot of the rest of the country doesn't have. Most of our judges are great judges.
Yeah.
There are a few that you scratch your head and you go, really, really.
Yeah, that's refreshing to hear.
But,
for all the
we're in better shape here. Even I wish those that don't like the direction Connecticut is in now, and I respect that. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you think we should be doing something else, fine, but it's a better place in terms of the process than most places in the country. Okay, it just is.
That's great.
It's
Aren't
not
we the
perfect.
constitutional state?
We're the Constitution state. That's right. There you go. See, that's something he's supposed to say.
Yeah. I'm catching up.
whoops.
I know.
I'm catching
Oops.
up. Actually, speaking of you guys, I don't know if you want to bring up refereeing, you want to do a couple of cards, it's fine. I'll be right back.
He's going to check with his conservator right now.
Yeah, that's how we know we've been on for a while. Two of us have had to pee.
I know it. I'm the guest. I can't.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
If you need to.
There you go. There you go. So anyway,
So are there other shows that you watch or are you like me? Whenever I see like a home improvement show, I'm like, this is terrible.
yeah, there really aren't. there's very few. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's some movies that I've liked. Witness for the Prosecution is an old movie. I think it was done in the 50s.
Yeah.
Is a classic, and it's a British style old. That is a phenomenal movie that is all about the law. To Kill a Mockingbird, is obviously based on the trial, but is much more than that. But that's a phenomenal movie that I would watch over and over again. My Cousin Vinny, we've talked about that.
We had to watch
A Few Good Men.
Yeah.
Is a great movie.
Well, how is that different? Because it's like
A JAG,
an army trial. Yeah.
Well, first of all, I might not be the right person to ask because I've never participated in that process. The rules are a little different. There's a balance there, obviously, in terms of there can be objections because of national security and those sorts of things. So there's some different evidentiary rules. The punishments are based on the military code.
Yep.
All right, not a state criminal code or a state civil code, but the military has its own code and its own rules, in addition to what the United States has. So that's different. But I can't tell you, for instance, whether you have a right to a jury or not. There happened to be one there.
Yeah.
I don't know how accurate that is. It probably is fairly accurate, but I just don't know the nuances. But that's a great movie.
Yeah.
So there's 3 or 4 or 5 legal movies that I just love.
We had to watch 12 Angry Jurors.
12 Angry Men.
Or 12 Angry Men.
That's a great movie. That's another one that's fantastic.
Yeah. I'm good.
Good.
So, but in terms of shows, I never got into LA Law. I never got into,
Like Law and Order.
Law and Order.
Matlock? It's a classic.
Yeah,
The new Matlock.
Yeah. I mean, it's okay, but I'd rather watch something else. I think, than a legal show.
Gotcha.
I mean, I'm doing legal work 40 to 60 hours a week. I mean, that's entertainment. I'm gonna find something else.
In the years that I was a laborer, carpenter, and even crew runner, I had a super that couldn't and wouldn't watch anything where you're like in a house. So like a sitcom or anything, because you'd be like, oh, you see the bathroom, or just like the whole.
Oh, wow.
And it was like a problem for him, because he'd be like, then he would start worrying about, because he was the guy that went to all, whatever, if we had 15 jobs, he was pretty much at all of them all day, making sure things were getting done correctly.
Okay.
Like he's the project coordinator for
Right.
however many jobs we had going. And it was funny because he would watch like Stargate. He would watch like
There you go. Right.
artificial,
Yeah,
it had to be a totally different universe for him to enjoy it. Otherwise he would think of that. I don't know if that's a stressor for you. Like,
Well, don't get me wrong. I love the law, right? I love talking about it. But I don't want to be entertained by it necessarily. I'll choose something else. But, and I have this discussion. Fortunately, I have friends on both sides of the political aisle, and we're able to talk about it. Sometimes we yell and scream at each other, but we always laugh, and we get back to it's just politics, right?
Right.
But I will tell you something. This country is great because of our rights that most countries don't have. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't want to get political, but I'll give you an example of something that just, I'm so passionate about, amongst many other things in the law. But, there's nothing wrong with having an immigration policy, okay? And whether you think it should be really, really tough or a little bit lax or somewhere in the middle, I respect all of that, okay? You want to close your borders completely? If you think that's good policy, absolutely, go ahead and close them. Okay? What we should not be doing as a country, because this is what makes us different, is we shouldn't be turning ourselves into a Gestapo state, and maybe that's not the right word, but a police state, or a state that doesn't allow for individual rights to effectuate those policies that you believe in. Again, there's nothing wrong with believing in that policy. If you think there are too many immigrants coming in, close your borders. Okay? But if someone is picked up off the street, you better give them a hearing. All right? And because they're entitled to it. The Constitution says all persons. It doesn't say all citizens there. Okay? So, yes, that person's an illegal immigrant and they have violated the laws. Okay? They have violated a statute coming in. And maybe they've been picked up or been charged or convicted of a law here. So they should go. No one should disagree with that. Okay? But you don't want to make a mistake.
Right.
Okay? So you give them a 30-minute hearing where they have an attorney. And if there's a mistake that's been made, hey, you got the wrong guy. Or no, I'm not that John Smith. I'm this John Smith. Or,
Right.
you know, I mean, you protect people's rights. And then, fine, if they don't belong here, put them on the next bus, get them out.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
But that's the troubling thing to me in terms of where we're at right now, is that we're confusing and bringing the passion to what we all believe in terms of what the policy should be. All right? And we forget how important the procedure and the rights are. That's what makes this country different.
Yeah.
Okay? You can stand here and criticize the Democrats if you want. You can stand here and criticize the president if you want. Okay? You can't do that in most other countries.
Right.
It's seditious. It's treasonous. It's being a traitor. You can get locked up for that stuff. This is the United States.
Yeah.
It's what makes us one of the greatest countries in the world, perhaps the greatest country in the world. Okay? And people just get caught up in the
passion part.
The passion part.
Yeah.
And they forget what's frankly even more important.
Yeah.
And that's look, that's really what pushes my buttons.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
And it's not just, you know, and it can be anything. It doesn't have to be, you know, again, right now, immigration's a big issue in this country. So, you know, we're focusing on that a little bit, but it can be anything, and it can be, and it's both sides.
Right.
It's both sides.
Yeah,
That's the problem.
I have no
Okay?
home when it comes to
No,
politics.
no.
I just don't.
And- and-
One thing I feel is very wrong is the pendulum that goes so far from one to the other, and it's like we don't even.
We can't keep it in the middle.
We don't. Well,
Or-
we don't
or-
seem to have the same goals.
Right.
You know what I mean? Is like I look at my grandparents, my grandfather on my dad's side, my grandfather on my mom's side, politically completely opposite of each other, but they're both mill workers essentially, and their main objective was to make work life better.
Right.
You know, having a better work life. How they went about doing that was different because of their political aspirations or their political beliefs.
Right.
But like when it came down to what they were fighting for was, you know, we want less people getting maimed or killed or hurt at work was like number one. Number two, making sure you get paid well for your time so you can go home and have a balance, not go home and be poor until you get back to work. You know, that's like, so they both had that, but you know, one was built unions and the other one, you know, negotiated
Yeah.
above or with the union. Like we bring in the union steward or a rep and say, okay, they want to give you this and you'll pay for it through this way. And he says, okay, well, we can give this. And he kept the unions out.
Yeah.
And kept, you know, that money in your pocket.
Right.
Versus where it was kind of a lost cause at this other place that my other grandfather worked at. And he's, you know, we brought in the unions.
You have to have an orderly society, right? That's why we have rules. That's why we have laws. But those individual rights are so important. And you know, to go back to something I said, okay, you know, I've never represented someone in a sexual assault or, you know, violence against children. That doesn't mean I don't believe those people have rights. And that those rights have to be protected. They have a right to a lawyer. They have a right to make sure that the police did the job the correct way. And why is that important? You say to yourself, that person is if they've done it, is the scum of the earth.
If they've done it.
If they've done it,
For sure.
okay? I want them locked up just as long as anyone else does.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure, okay, that
Yeah.
we haven't locked up someone wrongly. I want to make sure that that person has their day in court, because that's what makes this country great, as opposed to the government just, through the police or whoever, pulling you up off the street and locking you up.
Yeah.
That's not who we are.
Yeah.
And, if you think that's okay, all right, that's okay if you're on the side of the power. If all of a sudden the pendulum swings, and it always
the power
does,
always goes the other
it always
side.
does,
Yeah.
and you're on this side that doesn't have the power, that's not such a good thing at that point.
Right.
So again, that might not have been the reason I became an attorney, but it's one of the reasons why I want to continue to be an attorney, and why I feel so passionate about the law.
Yeah.
And there are parts of the law that are broken, just like anything
Right,
else. But we got to do a better job of fixing it. Doesn't mean you throw it away. Doesn't mean you get rid of the rights.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's
Yeah, and whenever you get into any kind of passion or occupation or anything, you always learn there are more aspects to it. You know what I mean? Like, I became a realtor because I felt like my body was having a rough time being a carpenter, and I wanted a more flexible schedule. But when it came down to it, I love working with people, and being a realtor, you get to work with way more people than I did as a contractor.
Right.
And then the negotiation part. I mean, it's like key factors that I enjoy most about the job weren't even the reason why I got into the job. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, I get what you're saying. Like, it's a constant practice and evolution of it. And also,
it's the practice of law. That's what we call it. It's
Yeah.
the truth. I
Yeah.
mean,
and as a
you're
society,
constantly learning.
as a society, to maintain rights, you have to maintain morals too.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Oh, you hope your rights are the foundation of those rights are morals.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think for the most part they are. I mean,
Yeah. Well, you get into that whole aspect of taking it to the extreme, which then they make a law about it. You know what I mean?
you can't stand up in a theater and yell fire.
Right.
Yes, we have a free speech right, but that creates a dangerous situation for society, and so that's illegal.
Yeah.
It's that balance, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's
I think about the driving thing because I lived it. It's, you have a cell phone, and at one point we were free to text and drive, and morally we didn't keep that.
right.
You know what I
It's
mean?
dangerous
Morally,
because it's dangerous as all hell.
we didn't do it the right way.
Right.
So they had to do studies and make a law based on the studies that you're worse than a drunk driver when you're texting while driving.
Right.
But at first, we were allowed to do. I remember, like, when Connecticut passed the law that you get a ticket for not having a hands-free set in a car or whatever, and not, if they saw the phone up to your, and I remember people like scoffing at it. Oh, that's crazy. And I was just like, but it's because we went too extreme. You're texting for 10 minutes while not looking at the road. Is going to be a problem, so
It's a balance,
Yeah.
and sometimes that balance gets out of kilter, right?
Right,
We have
yeah.
too many individual rights versus societal norms and protections of the greater good. There are those that argue, I don't want government doing anything to tell me anything at all. Well,
yeah,
then you really don't have a society, okay? But on the other hand, you've got those on the other side that say, government ought to regulate everything. Well, I mean, that's not this country, right? This
Yeah.
country is all about individual rights. So it's a balance, and there's this tug of war back and forth as to where we end up. And anyway, listen, the fact that you and I, and he doesn't say much, but
I'm
can
pushing
sit
buttons
here,
over here.
can sit here in a public forum that anyone can listen to and talk about this. And if I want to criticize the government or I want to criticize the courts, or something, I can do that. I'm not going to get locked up.
right. And we hope y'all like, share, and watch.
Spread the word.
Spread the word.
That's right. What is this? 147? Well, it's 174.
27.
27.
127th
Episodes.
episode. Yeah.
And no one's gotten bored of you yet.
Well, I don't know. we tend to keep an average of views. I feel we're around if you like and share and engage as a guest, and all of my guests do that, we usually run the average of 800 to 1,000,
That's
even 1,200
fantastic.
views. You know, there's definitely some that have been in here and, you know, they didn't even bring their phone. They don't have any social media to
Right.
tag, and, you know, that happens.
Well, I'd like to thank my 3 children for watching.
My mom said she was going to watch.
Oh, there you
it.
go. We got 4 tonight. We got 4 tonight.
We're
So
up to 38 views, 1 like.
there you go. There you go.
Who is it? Who
Well, the like was when Ben threw his 2 cents in, I'm sure.
okay.
No,
Or maybe it was when we were making sure you were
Oh,
conserved.
Ben actually made a comment. Let us know what legal questions you have.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, does anyone throw anything out there?
no.
I will say I have a legal question.
All right.
You know, this doesn't mean anything as far as legal advice, but you know, if someone wrongfully enters your house
Okay.
and you euthanize them, trying to be nice about it. What's the proceed? Like, you must be compelled to report it, I'm sure.
In Connecticut, you have to report the death.
Okay.
If you don't, it's a crime.
Okay.
I think it's a class B misdemeanor.
Any estimations as to how much money it costs for an innocent verdict on something like that?
In other words, if you had to hire a lawyer,
Yeah, hire a lawyer, do the because you get arrested, right? If there's a
Yep.
dead body in your house, you're getting arrested.
yeah, if you don't report it, you're going to get arrested, right?
Well, I mean, not even. Let's say you report it.
Okay.
You know, at a reasonable time, whatever the law says, so you report it.
Yeah.
And they have to come in and investigate, right?
Oh yeah. There's a dead body there. Someone's going to investigate.
Yeah, and I guess it's obviously situational, but
Right.
most likely you're going to be arrested.
We have self-defense rules in Connecticut. We are not a stand your ground state, right? You hear that term. In Connecticut, essentially, self-defense has 2 prongs to it. 3. You've got to be in danger, okay, and that's it's definitional and situational as to what that means.
Right.
You can't have a way out. So if you've got a way to flee, then you have to take that.
Even a window big enough.
Well,
You're supposed to give them your house.
no, because you're in your house. But if you're being jumped, okay, right? You're in, you've gone behind the restaurant to get to your car, and someone jumps you, okay, or tries to jump you. You cannot, in Connecticut, in all likelihood, pull your gun out and shoot that person dead, because it depends. If you're cornered, right, you're up against the fence or something and have nowhere to go. Well, all right, you've just satisfied that second prong. You don't have a reasonable alternative. But the third piece of that is you can't use any more force than is being used against you. So
Wow.
if that individual maybe has a knife or some dangerous instrument, you might be able to use a dangerous instrument back, and maybe that's the gun.
Oh,
But-
okay. So you
all
can
right.
bring a gun to the knife
Yeah.
fight.
Well, yeah, and you might be able to, depending on, the circumstances. But that would be kind of a gray area. That might be something that the state says, oh, no, you shouldn't. But your defense lawyer says, oh, no, you shouldn't. Maybe a jury's got to decide that, right? A jury of your peers.
Right.
But I had one of these years ago. And it was a similar sort of situation. Guys in the bar, they're mouthing off to each other. The locals don't like him so much, and there's a fight inside, and he gets the best of one of them, and while they're regrouping, he goes out into the parking lot, and they follow him out, and one of them pulls a knife, and he pulls a knife and kills the guy.
Wow.
The state brings assault with a deadly weapon charges and manslaughter charges, and fortunately, the police did a great job. They marked every blood spot. They tested the blood, so they knew
Who was bleeding at what time
we
and
could
where?
kind of map out what had happened. And my guy was pinned by 2 people against the corner of a fence. He had nowhere to go. And it was either stab or get stabbed, basically.
Yeah.
So we were able to prove beyond a reasonable not beyond a reasonable doubt. The state could not prove beyond a reasonable doubt that, he should be convicted. And we were able to raise a special defense of self-defense. And ultimately, we He didn't, again, the lawyer, right, does everything we can do to put the client in the best position. But at the end of the day, it was the state agreeing to drop the charges down to a simple assault charge, a misdemeanor with no jail time, a fine. Guy would end up with a criminal record. Or you can take this to trial where, at an hourly rate of a week's worth of work, probably, you're going to pay the lawyer. And if a jury comes back and convicts you of manslaughter and assault with a dangerous weapon, now you're going to jail, probably for 5 to 10 years, even though you don't have a criminal record.
So he chose the.
And so he pled out. But it was that was the known, right? And I counseled him on what his options were, and that's what the client ultimately decided to do.
Yeah.
But we had to do our job in terms of proving what we thought was a legitimate self-defense claim based on what the criteria are in the statute.
But therein lies, for me, the issue of if he had deeper pockets, he would have been able to prove himself innocent.
The law, Connecticut has done a decent job of trying to make sure that everybody has the same opportunity to, on the criminal side, present a defense. It's why we have public defenders that are funded by the state. It's why if you qualify for a public defender, the state pays for your experts. Okay, it's why the legislature, whether you agree with this or not, has made a policy decision that bail should only be used in extreme or limited circumstances. Because I get into a bar fight, and I've got a job as a lawyer, so I've got an okay living, and someone who's unemployed and is, destitute gets into that same bar fight. Well, the $1,000 bond you're putting on me to get out is very different in terms of the effects of the punishment than the same $1,000 you're levying against that homeless person who doesn't have the ability to bond out. That person's going to sit there for 6 months waiting for a trial date. I'm going to get out that day, if the next day. So what we've done with bond in Connecticut and bail is the court looks at a variety of factors. One is, how much is reasonable to ensure you're going to come back to court every time? How much is reasonable to protect the public, right? So you look at the severity of the crime. Mm-hmm. How much of it is based on there is some one of the factors of the 6 or 7 factors is ability to pay. Now that doesn't mean if you've gone out and committed murder and you're a homeless person that you're not going to get a bond, okay? And the judge is going to set a high bond because the crime is so serious. The danger to the public is serious. Are you going to flee and not come back to court? It may be serious. So bond is appropriate no matter what your financial condition is. But most times the court is, if the court believes that the public is safe and the court believes that you're going to come back to court, bond is, and you don't have a lengthy criminal record. That's one of the factors. Okay, do you have a job? Are you a productive member of society, one way or the other? Or maybe you're home raising children. You don't have to have a job, but are you productive, right? So the court looks at all those factors in terms of setting bond. But to your point, you're right. I mean, it takes money. Now, the public defender attorneys are just as good. The good ones are just as good as I might be or anybody else. The difference is they've got 400 cases, okay? And so they have a hard time devoting the time and energy to your case until they need to, because they've got to deal with that with everybody. Whereas I may have 200 or 300 clients at once, but I've got 40 or 50 criminal clients at once, right? So, and those cases are spread out over the course of probably 2 to 3 months, right? So I can manage and I can give that attention to that client as a private attorney,
right,
with staff, and maybe I'm a bigger office where I've got other lawyers as well who can jump in, than the public defender can, who's got, a caseload of 400 cases. So
and no paralegals.
Right, correct. They do well, and they might have 1 or 2 investigators, but you're right. They don't have. I mean, I've got 5 people working for me.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
They don't. That public defender doesn't have 5 people who are underneath them working.
So when it comes down to
one.
it,
You know, they got a secretary and maybe an investigator that they're kind of sharing.
Yeah.
So, and that's access to justice. That's access to the resources within the criminal system.
Yeah.
Civil, you know, that's a problem, right? You know, and people complain about that, and rightfully so. If you're a big multi-million-dollar multinational corporation, you might have an easier time, you know, hiring the best lawyers and the best investigators and the best experts versus the working person who doesn't have access to that.
Yeah.
So how do we fix that? Well, we allow class action suits. Okay, that's one way we try to level the playing field in certain types of cases. Other types of cases are pro bono work. I represent a couple dozen people a year without charging them. Now,
I've seen it.
that's
That's a true
right,
story.
Right. That's not the person that comes in looking for a handout. Okay. That's someone that comes in, has a legal issue that I know I can help them with, and I know that they're in trouble. And you know, I can't do that with every client. I have to make a living. I'm a private lawyer, right? I don't have the state of Connecticut paying me as they would a public defender or a judicial advocate or something, right? So I have to make a living, but and I'm happy to do that.
Yeah.
It's important.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. It's just it's a wild thing, the world we live in, when it comes to, like you said, access to justice and
Yeah.
stuff. It's tough.
yeah, it's not perfect.
Yeah.
I think we do a better job than most countries, but it's not, you know, in most states, but it's not perfect.
Right. Right. Dude, I could talk to you all night.
It's a lot of fun.
My wife might kill me if we do that.
It's so interesting to me, and just being able to converse with somebody who is so passionate, but also so well educated on the passion that you pursue. And
Listen, I don't have all the answers, but
Sure.
I know it's important. The most important thing, again, is trying to help someone. And if I can do that through the law, then that's a good thing. I've got great staff. You know, if you need a lawyer, if I can't help you, I'll get you to somebody who can. You know, we're in downtown Danielson, but we basically serve, you know, anyone who's in Windham County, essentially. You know, the 5 practice areas. You can call the office. I'll do the little plug, I guess, you know.
yeah, 860-779-3919.
You can contact us by email or by our website, which is I guess you don't say www anymore unless you're old.
You can if you want. It's free country, right?
Yeah, but it's yeah, exactly. It's saralaw.net, SARALAW.net. So we've got a website. You can hit a button and it'll send an email out to us, and we can get back to you. Set up an appointment. Not all of our consultations are free, but a lot of them are. It depends, you know, what type of matter it is and how much legal advice we're giving. Yeah, we're there to help.
Yeah.
And you know, you need some legal help, we're happy to help you.
Like, just one more, like, I don't know, maybe one more question. Maybe we'll go longer. So, like, somebody gets arrested for whatever, 2 a.m. You're getting that call?
No, I'm not. You know,
How's that work?
I'm not taking a call at 2 a.m. because I'm asleep, probably. But I'll get the call the next day, and you know, we'll call you at that point. And you know, there are many times where I you know, because if I'm at the office at 9 o'clock at night, I'll pick the phone up, and you know, and someone's gotten arrested, and I need someone in court tomorrow. And I'll look at my schedule. All right, you know, you can hire me. I'll be there. There aren't. I'm not sure there are a lot of attorneys that are going to pick the phone up at 2 a.m. You know,
Right. Makes sense.
But you have a right to a lawyer. You have a right to not incriminate yourself, so you don't have to give a statement if you know if we're in the criminal courts, right?
That was one of the questions. Thank you for jogging my memory.
Well, there you go.
Like,
Ben, you're never getting out of here.
should you talk to the cops? Anything if you're suspected of a crime.
If you are suspected of a crime, the rule 99% of the time is you should not.
Just lawyer up.
Just let them know and be very polite about it, that I'd like to consult with an attorney before I answer any questions. And that doesn't mean, sometimes I will tell the client after meeting with them, you've got nothing to hide here, or, they already know all of this because of all the other things. So
Yeah.
let's cooperate. Okay. At times that's okay,
Yeah.
but you shouldn't be making that decision yourself. Right.
Right. That was another question I had. Thank you for jogging my memory. Do you prefer?
We need to make sure that Ben's got control of the camera. He needs to be focused. You can ask the questions, but he needs to be focused the camera on himself, the angst, the anguish, the worry he's got that his wife is going to kill him. He's not home yet.
We faded to black about 30 minutes.
Oh, there you go. Perfect.
That's my punchline. All right. Now I forgot it. Do you prefer a client to come right out and tell you everything, or do you not want, if they know that they're?
I will tell them right out. First of all, I'm only going to meet with you if you're the client. Your wife isn't going to be sitting there. Your
My
parents are not
conservator?
gonna be sitting there. Well, maybe you're conservator if you're involuntarily conserved.
Yeah.
But what our relationship is attorney-client privilege.
Yeah.
Everything you tell me, everything stays with me and within my office unless I have permission from you to talk to someone else about it. And I will tell the client, if you are not 100% honest with me, I can't help you. And it doesn't matter whether it's the criminal case, whether you did it or didn't do it. It doesn't matter whether it's the land dispute, whether you know that the pin was moved or not. It doesn't matter whether, it's the PI case where, you were talking on your phone, okay? And that was part of the reason the accident was caused. I need to know everything, because if I don't have all the information, I can't help you.
Okay.
It does me no good to get sandbagged by somebody else where I didn't know that it actually happened. If I know the facts, then I know how to deal with it. I know the legal arguments to make. I know whether you should keep your mouth shut or not, or, these are the types of questions I need to ask in the deposition. You have to be honest with your lawyer. You have to be.
Gotcha. All right. So that makes
100% of the time, you have, because it's attorney-client privilege. You're safe with that lawyer.
Okay.
And if you don't tell the lawyer everything, the lawyer isn't prepared.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. So if you commit a crime,
You better let the lawyer know.
you just confess it. And
You better let the
and
lawyer
then
know.
They can legally help you out better.
Yep. Now, the lawyer's not going to lie to the court. So,
But a lawyer doesn't really get.
but a
doesn't
lawyer's
go
not
on the stand
right,
either.
Correct.
So,
The lawyer's not testifying. So the lawyer isn't really put in the position where the lawyer and what the client is. There's no conflict there.
Yeah.
Because you're right. That's the thing. The lawyer's not the witness.
And they're
the
not
lawyer's
gonna
not going to testify.
Yeah. Gotcha. Wild world you live in, man.
It's a lot of fun. Sometimes it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
A lot of fun. I've got, we're not going to, because he's got to go home. But, there's some stories that you can tell that you just kind of shake your head and like, oh my goodness, I can't believe, this happened today.
I love it. You are welcome here at the bench anytime. And
It's been a lot of fun.
And to tell the story.
You're both good friends, and you're both great at what you do. And this is a great service to the community. And it's been a pleasure being here.
That's right. Ben builds houses.
Yes, he does. Builds great houses.
Great houses.
And
I've sold them.
And energy efficient.
Yeah.
Latest technology, environmental,
environmentally sound to the technology that we know at this point.
Yep, exactly. Yeah,
Yep.
does a great job.
Yeah.
In fact, I had him over. I bought a house a few months ago, and I had him over. He's got a plumber who works for him, and we've got some things to do. And
Nice.
I had him over this morning.
Nice.
So, yep.
Perfect. Well, thank you both for being
Wakely
here.
Builders, right?
Wakely Builders.
There you go.
We tagged him.
Hey,
And, thank you both for being here. Obviously, you're both welcome anytime. It would be fun to have you as a guest host too. You know that.
Cross-examination.
Yeah. Guest host to ask questions too.
My cousin Vinny,
Yeah.
the two Utes.
I don't know who. Maybe I should go over there while
you
you
go.
question.
That's something, and I don't know, you've got guest hosts that have been here. It's probably not something that I should be doing, but I think for whether it's your 150th or your 200th, I think what you need to do is you need to be the guest and let two people host and they get to decide what they want to ask you, and you don't get to play host. You get to be the guest, and I think that would be a fun show.
I like that idea.
I like that idea, and I think I'm looking at the two. Kyle and I can sit on that side.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And you guys
he can sit here
question
because
us.
he's not going to push the buttons.
Yeah, that's fine. I like it. I like it. I actually love it.
There you go.
November 13th. I think that's going to be the 3rd year anniversary.
There you go.
Because I've been trying to figure out what we do. You know,
Well, I don't know. That's an
the
idea.
Anniversary one. I love it.
And if I'm not the host, you at least got to plug. This is so. If this show goes great, thanks Sarantopoulos. If it goes bad, blame Sarantopoulos. You know.
We always are grateful for Sarantopoulos.
There you go.
Thanks for watching, everybody. The Community Workbench family is promoting the Be the One campaign. It was started by the American Legion in efforts to stop veteran suicide. If you know a veteran, call them. Be the one to check in. For more details, visit betheone.org. Also, please extend this to all first responders as well. The Quiet Corner Peer Support Group is a great resource for help when dealing with PTSD. They are doing so much to help eradicate PTSD. Give them a like and some love on social media, especially Facebook and Instagram, and visit them if you need help. Other than that, join us again next Monday at 6 when we talk to Chris Sanjuarez, I think is how you pronounce that. Sorry if I'm not pronouncing that correctly.
Oh, Tanjuras.
Tanjuras.
Yep, it's a Greek name.
Oh,
It's a good thing you're here.
perfect.
There you go.
Good thing you're here.
Tanjuras.
I was thinking Hispanic
I'm
for
reading
some
it upside
reason.
down, but I think
Yeah.
so. I think that's Tanjuras.
Tanjuras. Okay, Chris Tanjuras. He is from Rational Acoustics. They are the developers of Smart SMAART acoustic test and measurement in DSP modeling software. So these guys do sound for bands. He sent me a couple of pictures, Dropkick Murphys.
Oh, wow.
Stuff like that. Like just
That's gonna be
and
fun. I'll
They're
definitely tune into that.
They're located out of Woodstock. They're right across from Crabtree and Evelyn over there in Woodstock, and just some of the stuff that he sent me is just super, super interesting to me, and anybody that's into the audio and band and whatnot. These guys were basically recommended to us from Eric Gould, Savage Systems over in Putnam, who's heavy into the band, and audio scene. So thanks to Eric Gould, and thank you for Rational Acoustics. As always, buy local, hire local, dine local, volunteer local, donate local, hire a local attorney when you need them. Have great days.
Great advice.